Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, February 10th, 2026 City of Oregon City Commission work session. We will be convening the meeting and calling the roll.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Wilson.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. On tonight's agenda, we have a number of items that are here for our consideration. Under general business, we have stormwater monthly fee exemption. At Public Works. The most amazing department ever. I think somebody's clearing their throat there in the back. Maybe he needs some water. You'll get your turn.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dana Webb, Public Works Director. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Krista to introduce herself and to present the topic tonight.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm Krista Reiniga, and I work with Brown and Caldwell. I'm an engineer. I've been doing stormwater work since the early 90s in Oregon, and I've worked for Oregon City for many of those years. I think I've been in front of many of you before.
Thank you.
So nice to see you. So yeah, I'm just gonna start off, okay, I got a clicker here, talking about the stormwater utility fee credits. I'm gonna just talk about Oregon City's stormwater utility, just so we're all on the same page of where you are now. Am I doing something?
Jacob's gonna fix it.
Okay. Go back to the agenda. And then I'll do a little overview on just the background of stormwater utility fees and, the most common aspects of them, I guess. And then I did a literature review on utility fee credits around the state for similar sized cities with similar regulatory requirements. And I'm going to give you the results of that and then give a summary of kind of the options and different ways people set things up for utility fee credits that you could think about and choose from if you decided to change your utility fee credit or get rid of it or whatever you decide to do, as there's sort of a menu of things to think about. So Oregon City has a stormwater utility fee, and for single family residential, it's $15.95 a month. A single family residential is considered one ERU or an equivalent residential unit. And that amount is assumed to be 2,500 square feet in Oregon City. So then for multifamily, for every 25 square hundred feet you have, you pay $15.95. So if you have 5,000 square feet of impervious, and it's impervious surface, I should say. If you have 5,000 square feet of impervious surface, you would pay 2 ERUs or 2 times $15.95. And then for your commercial properties, it's set up a little differently where you pay $15.95 per storm unit. And the storm unit is basically you have an area range, which is in that, sorry, it's not very easy to see. On the left side table, there's different ranges of area. So, and they all go about 2,500 feet or square feet increments, and so you figure out which area range you're in, and then you multiply it by a development intensity factor to get what your storm unit is that you multiply by $15.95. So in terms of an exemption, there's this clause in your code that says that vacant and unimproved properties are exempt from the charges, but it also says that any person seeking an exemption or reduction in the fee or appealing therefrom may do so pursuant to a demonstration to the city manager or designee that the public storm drain service does not receive stormwater from property used or occupied by that person. And it says that the demonstration shall include evidence of legal disposal of stormwater to a private retention system, which means infiltrating it all into the ground, or to a private storm drain system. I'm not exactly clear what that might be and where that would eventually go. And then it says public water body or receiving facility. So I think it's important to remember what you're allowing now because you're allowing an exemption even if they still have runoff and it's going to a public water body. And you do have a lot of regulations that cause you to have to deal with public water bodies. So in some ways, I think of those as part of your drainage system. The other thing about this is it's not super explicit for a developer to understand exactly what they have to do to demonstrate that they should get an exemption, and what, it doesn't really specifically say like 100% exemption, but that's sort of implied. So it leads to some questions and maybe a little lack of clarity. So in general, stormwater utility fees are very common now, and I think they all, many of them came into play in the early 90s when you started having stormwater requirements and you needed a dedicated funding source just like you have for water or wastewater. And I think all of the ones I reviewed and all of the ones I know of are based on charging people for their impervious surface, which generates the runoff. And almost all of them, one of the challenges is that not everyone has mapped impervious areas of every parcel in the city, especially for single-family residential. A lot of cities now have caught up to having impervious areas delineated for commercial, industrial, and maybe even some multifamily, but doing it for all single-family residential would be pretty onerous. And so usually there's like some analysis of aerials to figure out, in general, our average impervious area for single-family residential is this amount. And then that's sort of the base fee or the equivalent residential unit that gets multiplied for the fees. For a long time, I would say most of the fees were just like a single straight fee. And I think that there's been a lot of movement to separate that fee into different elements or components of the fee, because people have been asking for credits. And there was a realization that 100% credit didn't exactly make sense, because you have so many components to your program that you have to pay for that aren't even related to whether somebody keeps their runoff on site or not. And I'm going to get into that. So this table on the right just kind of shows sort of how, it's kind of an example. This is City of Eugene, but how you have different rate categories in terms of customers, and then you have different rate, some, not all, have divided their the rate into components. So that Eugene, for example, has an impervious surface component to their rate, and then they have a street-related component to their rate, and an administrative component. And so the only thing you can get a credit on is the impervious surface component. That's just one example, and I'll go through more examples. But I did want to talk about all the things you have to pay for with this utility fee. And if you think about if somebody keeps their runoff on site, does it help reduce your costs? I mean, because we're trying to think about, should they get a credit? Is it reducing the cost of our program? So I have some slides here that talk about what you do basically for sort of stormwater quantity, and then a couple slides for stormwater quality. And I think if you think about this, you have to do stormwater master planning and have capital improvements to make sure that you're not getting flooding on your streets. And you have to address water quality in some of those capital improvements. And then you have all the system management in terms of catch basin cleaning, system repairs, things like that. I think if everyone in the city kept their stormwater runoff on site, yes, these costs would go down, and your capital improvement projects might be able to be smaller, so you would save some costs there. But you'd still have to manage flooding in certain areas, and especially keeping drainage from the streets and keeping the streets clear and free of flooding. But I would say these are the areas where keeping runoff on site might have the most impact. But you also have these regulatory programs for water quality. And there's two programs that I'm going to cover here. One is your NPDES MS4 permit. It's your Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System permit. And it requires you to have basically a big stormwater management program. And it has a lot of elements in it. It's got public education and public involvement that you have to do. You have to do industrial and commercial inspections, illicit discharge detection and spill control. You have to have an erosion control program for construction sites. You have to control new development. You have operations and maintenance, water quality retrofits. You have to do water quality sampling, and you have to do a lot of administrative work, annual reporting, permit renewal applications, things like that. So if you think about a lot keeping runoff on site, that may not really reduce any of these costs. You still have to comply with these regulations, and you will still have the majority of these costs. And then I wanted to mention this program too. This is your total maximum daily load requirements. It's another water quality regulatory program that you're required to comply with. So the MS4 stormwater permit applies to your conveyance system, your pipes that carry the storm drainage and everything. And this program is more focused on the streams, maybe not necessarily your conveyance system, but what's going on in your streams. And there's certain pollutants that you have to control. You have to control erosion in your stream banks and things like that. Temperature is an issue. So in addition to your conveyance system, your stormwater utility does fund management of this program too. And this program also has annual reporting and 5-year updates and lots of administrative work that goes along with it.
Do we have a buffer ordinance?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of in summary, this is just a chart. I was going to put something like this together, and I found it on Clackamas County's website. It's just a chart showing all these different cities. I focused on cities that have permits similar to you, regulatory requirements similar to you, but they were all kind of outlined in this chart already. And this just shows they all have stormwater utilities and what those monthly fees are in general. So Oregon cities, and this is from 2024, 2025, so this is when your fee was $14.77. But you can see you're right there on the average in terms of your fee, but all these cities have fees. So then we looked into credits. So all these cities have fees. Do they offer fee credits? So just kind of not so randomly, but picked 11 cities that I knew were similar sizes, had similar regulations, mostly in the Willamette Valley, except for Bend. I did look at Bend's, to see what kind of fee credits they offer. So all of the cities in red on this list offer no fee credits that I could find. And I will caveat this with, I did this all based on a web search. I did not call these jurisdictions. So it's possible maybe when they have informal credits that they offer people when they're doing their development reviews, I don't know, but they don't, they all had pretty good documentation about their fees, and none of them in the red showed that they offered any kind of credit. So some have decided, no, we don't want to give any credits. So I'm going to show, I'm going to go through the ones that are in the black font there. And I will say, of all those in the black font, none of them offered 100% credit. They all offered a credit, but none of them were 100%. I did want to start out back with this little graphic again, just to say that all of them basically have a passive credit. And that is, if you reduce your impervious surface, you know, if you're a 3,000 square foot lot and you reduce your service down to 1,000 square feet in this graphic, you would reduce your fee. So reducing your impervious area is just already a part of your program. So the credits that I'm talking about are actively keeping the runoff from that impervious area on site. And I will say too, out of all the ones that I reviewed, the credit that did provide credits, the credit was for keeping water on site through retention. I didn't see any credits allowed for diverting it somewhere else, like into a stream or anything. It was only for, you have to manage all your runoff on your site. So I'll just run through a few of these so you can see some of the examples and some of the different components that these cities have chosen from. But this is City of Albany. I just pulled this graphic from their website, so they have the strikeout because they just updated their rates, but they have two components. The top is the single-family residential, and then they have everything else, all non-single-family residential. And they had 3 tiers of single-family. I don't know how they measure the impervious areas for those, whether they just charge the largest and have people prove that they have less, I don't know. But for each of those, they have divided their fee into 2 elements, a base charge and an impervious surface charge. And they do not allow, and for many of these, they don't allow credits for single-family residential. And I think part of it is because single-family residential typically are exempt from all the requirements anyway. They're exempt from the water quality and flood control requirements if they're small enough. So I think there's just a feeling of we're already kind of making up for them, so they don't get credits. And it's also just harder on a small lot. So I would say most of the cities I reviewed did not give a credit for a single-family residential. The highest credit in Albany that they allowed on that impervious, and they only allow a credit on the impervious surface charge. The base charge is, you can't get any kind of credit on that. And the highest credit they allowed is 25% of that service or charge. And then I wanted to mention this too. I thought this was kind of interesting, but industries, there are certain industries that have to get what are called 1200Z permits. It's also a stormwater permit. And when they get that kind of permit, they have to do a lot of stormwater management. And so Albany decided that for industries that have that 1200Z permit, they will also allow them to have a credit. Whether or not they keep their stormwater on site, they just feel like they have to do a lot of stormwater management, so they could get the credit. And then if you remember when I was talking about what you're required to do under your permit, you're required to do a public education program for stormwater. And so Albany decided if the schools will provide that education service, we'll count that as a credit towards their impervious surface charge. So they allow that credit as well. So these are just kind of some of the options. Yeah. City of Eugene, I showed this, this graphic before, but they have, like I said, the impervious surface charge, a street-related charge, and an administrative charge, and then different categories of development. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention for Albany is that they only allow the credit if you go above and beyond what's already required in their standards. So if you're required to, say, retain a 10-year storm, and that's all you're doing, they're not going to give you credit. But if you go beyond that, that's when they'll start calculating a credit for you. Eugene is not the same way. Even if you're required to do these things, they'll still give you a credit for it. But they have these 3 components. They do allow a credit up to 100%, but just of the impervious surface charge. So that's why it's not of the whole fee. And then they also allow a water quality credit. So that's different from addressing flow and runoff, but they'll allow another 10% credit if you treat at least 20% of the impervious area on your site. So this is another option if you want to give a credit for water quality in addition to flow control. The City of Bend, what they did is they looked at their budget for their stormwater program, and they divided it into these 6 categories: capital improvements, maintenance, water quality management, engineering and project management, public information, and administration. And they figured out what % of their budget they're spending on each of those. And then they based their credits on that budget category, because what they were saying is, if you keep your runoff on site, it'll help us with our capital improvements. And if it's for water quality, it'll help us with our water quality management. So they used that percentage of the total budget to develop their credit. So if you keep all your runoff on site, they'll give you they rounded it to 36% credit. And if you do water quality management, they'll give you a 23% credit. They rounded it up. So they kind of figured out what portion of our program is benefiting from these properties that keep water on site. So this is just kind of repeating what I said, but they have a water quantity credit, a water quality credit, and then you can add the two together cumulatively to get up to a 59% credit. They also offer a credit for that education piece of $2 per student per year for providing that education program at their schools on stormwater. And then they offer credits for demonstration projects on a case-by-case basis. I think I have 2 or 3 more examples here. Gresham, credits are only available for going above and beyond what's already required. Theirs is kind of complex because it's based on modeling of your hydrology, and they figure you already have to do sort of these hydraulic analyses when you're doing your development. So they use the same model that you used for hydraulics to figure out if you're having a reduction in your stormwater rate or your stormwater volume from those models, which is kind of complex in terms of someone having to review it, I would say. And you can get up to a 27% reduction for runoff rate. And then they do allow some credit for single-family residential. They were maybe the only ones I saw that did that. But again, it's only a maximum credit of 27%, or if you treat 75% of the impervious area or address runoff, or it's 14%. It's only a 14% or 27% discount. Salem also has different components of their charge, an impervious area classification based on their EDUs, and then they have different single-family tiers. And then City of Portland, their fee is very complex, and I'm not even going to get into it here because they have different components based on how many dwellings you have, and then they have another component based on how much impervious area you have, but it all adds up to one fee. And then they give you a credit of 35% on that total fee for managing all the runoff on your property. And I will say that Portland was, I think, one of the first ones, because it was in the early, or maybe it was late 90s when they decided to allow for a credit. And they did an extensive study on what they thought was the benefit of keeping runoff on your site. And they did they had a financial analysis go through all their numbers and everything. And so they're the ones that I've seen do the most rigorous analysis to come up with that 35% credit after they looked at all the money they spend on just maintaining drainage on streets. So I'm at the summary, couple of slides here. So a passive credit is already in place, as I mentioned. You can reduce your impervious surface, and that'll reduce your fee. And then in terms of options for non-passive credits, would be maintaining all the runoff on your site, providing water quality treatment, conducting demonstration projects, conducting education programs, or holding a 1200Z, the industrial stormwater permit. Those were all the options that I saw come up in this literature review that you could think about providing. And then in terms of administrative options, there's only allowing passive credits, just not allowing any credits at all. That's what 5 or 6 of the other cities had done. You have the option of breaking your fee into 2 components and maybe only providing a credit on one component. You could provide a full exemption, which is kind of what you do now, maybe just providing more specifics about that. You would need to decide, do you want to allow credits only for non-single family residential, or do you want them to be able to get credits too? Do you want to allow credits only for going above and beyond what you already require developers to do, or do you want to give anyone a credit that does these things? And then You could estimate the percent of your stormwater management program that benefits all users, like what do you do on the streets and capital projects and things like that, you'd have to do anyways, and then apply those credit percentages, kind of like Ben did. So that's just kind of a summary of what I found in looking at those 11 cities in terms of the range of options and components of the fees. That's all I have.
Everyone's totally world versed in this, I see. Questions? I know that this has come up infrequently, but more recently with the properties on Abernathy. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, isn't it our overall goal to try to get compliance with our permits and have all the systems basically, not to have any of these one-offs where they're running into they're not connected? I mean, would that be an ultimate goal to try to get all those non-compliant properties to be in compliance? Because I don't know how that affects our permit, but I'm concerned that we have particularly industrial and commercials that are, running into streams that are fish-bearing streams. And to me, that makes no sense. And I don't see why we shouldn't be working with those folks to try to get them to comply. And maybe there's some impossible situations where, but do we have people, do we know how many, not the exact number, but do we have more commercial and industrial properties that fall into that, or do we have some residential properties that fall into this?
Is your question how many properties currently get the exemption, or how many properties drain directly to a water body?
Are they one and the same?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I don't know, but, so I guess, Dana, you guys can kind of correct me a little bit, right? A little bit here, right? When you see these older developments that we've had, primarily commercial, industrial, right? That predate probably our stormwater standard, that do predate our current stormwater standards. They may even predate stormwater standards that were in place 20 or 30 years ago. So you have a situation where an older development, right, has some type of stormwater management. But let's say you've got a creek right behind you like Abernathy, right? If they were to come in and redevelop, we would address on-site stormwater management to our code.
Right, that's what you said before.
But we're probably, we would probably tie them in still to the creek because that's where the water is going to go. We wouldn't just put them into our system to then put them into the same creek or into the Willamette or into the Clackamas Cove. So you've got two things going on here. One, we're talking about on-site stormwater detention, but then we're constantly upgrading our public systems, right? As subdivisions are constructed, we're updating, the storm ponds are built to current standards to treat that stormwater. So really, I think this is, as redevelopment happens, it's treating the on-site stormwater detention on the premises, right? Before it's released into the system. Once it's in our system, obviously we do our upgrades as well. All the pond maintenance we do, any upgrading of storm systems, piping, discharges. So it's hard, right? Because stormwater's, it's so large, right? And you're essentially taking this water, collecting it, treating it, discharging it. I think what we're trying to get at here is what happens in that situation when a development happens. They do their on-site stormwater management for the what we consider private water, before they release it into the system, whether that's our system, the public system, or in this case, into a water body, right? We still have requirements for temperature, pollutants that are in there, for flashiness of creeks, right? So, I would argue that there's still a stormwater requirement to address Abernathy Creek, right? Clackamas Cove. So just because you're not putting it into our system I think it's hard to justify 100% exemption, in my opinion, because we're still doing work as part of our permit, as part of fixing outfalls, as, you know, as the stormwater modeling has changed, right? Really focusing on, you know, kind of where you're seeing kind of a, you know, significant erosion because of how much water is being released. So, you know, it's a very big comprehensive thing. So it's, you know, once again, I think it's hard to say that just because I'm putting it into the stream doesn't mean that it means I'm 100% exempt, because we still do have impacts that we do have to address. But I think your question is getting to, you know, I
You're still
think
on.
I'm losing it.
Nope, it's acting crazy.
I think, you know, I think what your question gets to is really as redevelopment happens, then that development is brought up to standard. So there's going to be multiple properties throughout the city that are probably have different designs in place that probably do water quality to a different standard. The other complicating factor is, especially down in the 96 flood area, we don't usually do detention, right? It's all about water quality and get it out as fast as you can because you've got all this other water coming down to essentially the floodplain, right, where that water is going to be. So there's nuances here, but I think really just focusing on how do we want to address this exemption component of our storm charges relative to what we're doing today if we want to make those changes.
Well, maybe, so I'm not picking on Abernathy, but the former county shops. My concern is that if they are discharging directly into Abernathy Creek and it isn't being held or processed or something in some way, I think there's a broader question there in terms of the impacts, because most of that surface over there is asphalt. And now that there are more, instead of just having the county shops, which was pretty intense to begin with, now there are multiple businesses in there that are also that are also very truck-centric. They have a lot of materials and all of that. So to me, the impact of what is happening there and what previously happened there in many ways outweighs an exemption. I mean, unless they have a plan in place that they are holding the water, treating it, and then it's going into the creek, that's one thing. But if it's just running off the area and going right into the creek, to me, that seems that there is a disconnect between what the goals of the permit are, what the goals of the city are, and seemingly no responsibility on the other side in terms of treating the water in some way so that it does not detrimentally impact the water body that they are discharging into.
But I think it's just like any other property in the city that might be pre-existing non-conforming. When they redevelop, they upgrade it to the system that the standards that are in place at the time. So I think we've got, these are kind of, to me, this feels like two different conversations. One is a pre-existing non-conforming, potentially storm system, private storm system on a site, and the other is how do you want to address from a policy standpoint
Well, do they have a storm
exemptions?
system?
We
don't know.
Mayor, until we don't audit everyone's
Oh, and I
private
know, but I
storm
mean,
systems.
because they came and I just assumed we might have some information about what is going on over there.
We're not, I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
Okay,
We're
all right,
not focusing on individual properties.
No, that's the only one that I have an example of that I know of. That's the only reason. I wasn't trying to pick on them. I'm just trying to figure out where the balance is of exempting them versus not exempting them. And I say them, I'm meaning all the people. So there's mention of some, that residential,
Is it okay for me to say something?
Sure,
just jump in,
absolutely.
please. You know something.
So the exemption is going to apply to, I mean, if you have an exemption in your code, that means anyone can come in and say, whether they discharge to a creek or whether they
Wherever.
discharge to, unless you specify something different, they can come in and say, I'm keeping all the runoff on my property. I'm infiltrating it all, so why do I pay this stormwater fee? And so the question is, do you want to give them an exemption? And then if you do you want to give them 100% exemption? And then also, most of the exemptions that I've looked at are only for keeping all the runoff on your site, but you allow it to also go to a creek instead of the system. So that's kind of the other question. Do you still want to allow that in your code? So it's a little bit separate from the stormwater standards piece of it that I think you're talking about too, which is like, what do these people have to do? You know, I mean, they are going to have to do those things if they redevelop or develop.
Yeah, but I think that's so far off, and we're talking about
Yeah, it is.
what the impacts are, you know, today. And I think the cities that we're looking at sort of above and beyond, to me, makes sense in terms of giving them a partial exemption. I don't think anybody should get 100% exemption, because there's still an impact to us as a city and our system and everything else we have to do. It's not like it's a zero-sum gain. It's always going to impact whatever is going on in Oregon City. It's not like there's no impact. There is some, even if it's discharging, holding, whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's reasonable.
So, right down the street from me, new apartment complex, and there are those, along a lot of the curb, a lot of the road is those swales. Is that water quality, or are they retaining all of the runoff on site with those? Or just evening out the flow? I don't know what those,
It can depend. I mean, you do have a requirement for retention that they have to infiltrate, but if there's also some like off-ramps, if the soils aren't porous enough and things like that, then you kind of move down to just doing treatment. So my guess is that it's probably treatment if you see it running off from there, treatment and
I don't know
conveyance
if, I
it's a
don't know if
swale.
it's
You're talking about the storm drainage swales that are along
Yeah.
the edge of the complex?
right.
I thought those were all storm drain swales, things that the water runs into.
But then goes where? Or does
Yeah,
it
it
stay
gets-
on site?
It gets treated
What?
and then,
I would imagine that a vast majority, we really struggle with infiltration in Oregon City because of our slopes and our soils. So the vast majority of what you're going to see is probably a combination of water quality treatment in those swales, plus maybe a detention component that then releases it into our system.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it probably, like he was saying, it probably has a flow control component too, to reduce the peaks, to eliminate erosion and things like that, and flooding. So it'll hold it and release it at a slower rate to eliminate flooding and address water quality, because retention may not have been feasible. But DEQ wants people to retain. They want people to infiltrate the water. It's just our soils don't always
allow for it, yeah.
allow for it without building a ginormous facility. So there are some off-ramps.
That was a big problem when we were putting in the infrastructure in red soils, because you know what that clay soil
Yeah.
up there is like. It's just, you know, it would sit on the ground. It wouldn't really go anywhere.
So like if you're going up 7th, right, we have those two new developments that have been constructed, and they have swales, curb, swale, sidewalk, right? So if you look at those, they're a combination of water quality, so trying to, drop any, pollutants out. So it's picking up all what we consider private water. So it's coming off the rooftops, the parking lot, getting treated. And then I haven't looked at those in a little bit, but I would imagine there's probably, sometimes 2 to 3 sections where it's like, okay, it's going to release water at a certain rate. If it gets too high, there's essentially like an emergency check where the water can come out. So but that then is going into our system, just because, trying to infiltrate that much water in that urban environment is really tough.
And those would generally be just what the code requires.
Those would be
Not-
designed
wouldn't
to
be
our
over-advised standards.
stormwater standards, which are compliant with our MS4 permit, our MPDS permit. So there's this trickle down of what we end up implementing from the design of these storm ponds or these detention areas or the swales. There's multiple options there, but they are all designed to address water quality and water quantity.
Okay.
I mean, I think it is good to provide incentives for people, if they go above and beyond, they can do extra things, put pervious pavement on their property and roof gardens and, infiltration facilities where they really do get all the water into the ground. And that is a great thing because it's mimicking pre-development more. And so I do think it's beneficial to provide a credit for that just because they are moving above and beyond and it does help your system. But the question is, how much credit do you provide? When do you provide it? Where do you provide it? Kind of thing.
Well, sorry.
Oh, yeah, you can continue. No? Okay.
I was going to go off on another.
Oh, it's fine.
Go ahead.
So I have a couple questions, just again, I'm kind of curious. How many properties are how often are we granting exemptions?
That's a good question.
So we worked with utility billing. We pulled a list of utility accounts that are charged zero. I will share that in that we found a handful of properties that were being charged zero that are being adjusted to charge for their appropriate stormwater because we do not have in our files an approved exemption. So we are confident we have 3 properties, which are, I believe, the ones along Abernathy that we recently gave a full 100% exemption. We have 2 other properties that we are confirming if they've been granted an extension or have been underbilled. And the rest of the properties that showed up with a 0 under stormwater are for properties that have been granted water service that are outside of city limits. And so I think there's a handful of those properties over the years. So currently, 3 properties have full exemption. Unfortunately, we're not able within our system to find out who's been granted a partial exemption. And I know there's a handful. I've approved 1 or 2 of those. So for example, the new apartments off Maple Lane, half of that development drains directly to the creek, the other half drains into our pipe system. They've been granted a partial exemption based on the code allowing an exemption for direct disposal to a creek.
Is it filtered or anything before it goes in there?
It would meet the current stormwater standards, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So a handful, that. So that's my first question, just the scope of what we're talking for actual exemptions.
It's not 25,000.
But there are some that have gotten a partial because
Okay.
a portion, they either retain a portion on site, which I believe was how Living Hope Church was given a partial exemption. So really just some clarification from administering it consistently would be appreciated.
And then, follow-up question. So Tony, you were mentioning that, when, say there is a property that, has an exemption, they're draining into Abernathy, we still have a cost, as a city for doing, you mentioned monitoring temperature and things like that. The cost of those activities, is that paid fully or in part by the stormwater fee?
Fully paid by the stormwater.
Okay, thank you.
So I think it was good to hear some of the requirements that aren't just pipes, right? We've got the education component, we have the permitting component, right? It's keeping up with regulations as they change, which then change our design standards. You have a monitoring component, you got a reporting component. So there's, there's a lot that gets into that fee that is still applicable, even though you may not be necessarily using 100% of our system or 10% of our system, right? There's still this base cost that's just there that we got to pay for.
No, and so that helps me because, if our property is contributing to a service that the city is still needing to monitor and we have a cost associated with that, I don't think a full exemption makes sense because they are adding in part to, again, services that we still have to provide.
So of the 3 that have the full exemption, do we have any requirement on them to report back to us on anything?
The code does not require it. It just authorized a full exemption.
Well, we should probably do that. I think that they bear some responsibility, in my opinion. If they're getting an exemption, we need to get something in return in terms of, giving us an assessment of what's going on. Just as a personal example, I was just astounded by all the stuff that comes off your roof into, through your drains and then ends up, I have splash pads, concrete ones, and so I have to clean those out every so often. I was looking at all the stuff in there and I thought, it's not going into the ground because it's being stopped by that, but what if it was? That's like yuck. Thoughts, gentlemen?
So would you like us to look at trying to come up with a percentage, or, is there a particular jurisdiction that seemed to resonate? Like, should we be giving exemptions for putting it into the creek? Or are we really giving exemptions for going above and beyond minimum standards? Right?
Okay, for me,
Apply for that.
I don't think a residential credit makes sense. For one thing, it'd be an administrative nightmare, but, you're not talking about
At least
that
a
much
headache.
water or that much money. I like the idea of there's two separate chunks going on that we're paying for in that fee, the administrative and the street. I don't think there should be a credit on that. But on the other portion, to me, whether they're doing something over and above or putting it directly in a stream, then I think there should be a credit of some percentage on that. So that, for me, that's kind of the rough outline. And I think that's pretty close to what one or more of the other cities are doing.
No, I agree with you. I think that no matter what, we always have a cost. There's no way to say you don't have to do that. They shouldn't get an exemption for that, but I think you're right, the above and beyond. Again, if we're giving something, we should be getting something. And if they're getting an exemption, do they have to apply for this every year?
Currently, it's a one-time approval and it's good.
Yeah, so we need to get rid of that. I think just an exemption for life, I don't think that helps us as a jurisdiction. I think the properties that we are having to deal with bear some responsibility, as you stated. And if they're doing something that is going to contribute to the welfare and well-being of the entire community by either holding the water on site or in some way filtering it or treating it, then yes, they should get some credit. But if it's just getting dumped in there, I don't think that's reasonable. Gonna come back to bite us in the butt somewhere.
For the exemptions that we already provide, they're all partial, right? Or are they full?
There are 3 full, which
Okay.
are the 3 properties that we recently approved on Abernathy.
Okay,
The rest are partials, and I just don't have a good count on that.
okay. I agree with Commissioner Mitchell.
So, sounds like, so no exemptions for residential properties. And then that there'd be some type of an administrative base to the fee that no exemption can be granted from.
Right.
And then there would be some type of an exemption process as a percentage for, infiltration, green roofs, anything that can reduce flows into the system through infiltration, as well as direct discharge into a water body. Does that sound close? Okay.
Are you saying direct discharge without doing any filtering?
Everything would have to be filtered
Filtered, okay.
for new development.
Oh, yeah.
For new development. So when you build something, you have to meet our on-site stormwater management of your private water, the water from your property, right? And so this is the discharge then is either going to go into a water body like Abernathy Creek, or it's going to go into our system, and then we pipe it, and then we discharge downstream. Question, concerns, or?
So were you saying that earlier that of the jurisdictions reviewed that we're the only ones who do the full exemption then? Okay.
That, of the ones I looked at, I did find some others in other states that allowed 100% exemption, but I was just looking at Oregon.
Okay, thank you.
And were we the only ones who did the exemption for discharge to a water body?
Of the ones I looked at, yep.
Yeah, I think we should not give an exemption for that. Unless they do some of the other stuff. You okay with
So
what he outlined?
one of the exemptions is flow, right? So if you keep everything on site, then you're not discharging anywhere.
Mhm.
And then the other would be going above and beyond for water quality. So I just wanted to mention that there's like two things we're talking about here, flow and water quality.
So I haven't really heard it change from what I described, so I guess we'll go back and work on what that would look like in terms of code change, and then bring that back for discussion and decision.
Yeah, the other thing I'll need to check in with utility billing, currently our stormwater fee is one base fee, and so an effort to kind of divide it up into two different parts. I need to confirm exactly how that works and what that takes to implement within our utility billing. If that means the fee is then two different fees on the utility bill, or if that's something that can be in the background in the system. So I will need to confer with Matt and his team that the proposal of kind of dividing that fee up is easily implementable.
Matt, we're talking about your department right now.
I will also need to look at the rate methodology. We may have to adopt that two separate components. So it would include some code cleanup, but also probably some rate, possibly methodology update, but definitely an adoption of two components within that rate.
So let's first, just for conversation's sake, let's say that there's a base rate, right? And it's 50% of it's 50 cents, right?
Right.
And then we have this other component that's 50%, so it's 50-50. Okay, so the base is always going to be applicable. Of this 50% that could get an exemption, so let's say, like, are we thinking 100% could be exempted of that 50%, or a percentage of that other 50%? So, like, is the commission open to saying, okay, you could get a 50% reduction of your bill? We're going to say you're discharging into this creek, so we're going to give you a 50% reduction. Or is it reasonable to say, okay, maybe the maximum is 25%, right? And then there's a scale that slides in there. Or is the commission okay saying you could potentially exempt 50% of your bill, your fee?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Did any of the other cities grant a 100% credit for essentially the,
Yeah.
we'll call it the impervious surface,
Yeah,
piece?
one of them did.
Us?
No.
No, wasn't us.
I want to say it maybe. Eugene. Eugene has the three, the street, the administrative, and the impervious surface.
And then if.
And if you retain all of your water on site, you can get 100% credit on the impervious surface.
But you still pay the street portion, like the street-related costs, and you still pay the administrative costs.
Yep, no exemptions
Okay.
on that. And the way they did it is if you infiltrated only half of the impervious, runoff from half the impervious, you get a 50% credit. So it was all based on the percent of runoff you kept on site. And just to that impervious surface fee.
I mean, I think that makes sense to me.
That makes sense to me too.
I agree.
If you're retaining 100% of it on site, you would only have to pay the administrative half in your example.
What about the discharge to a stream?
Yeah, see, that's the part I'm still hung up on, is the discharge.
So what do we do with the water?
It's never hitting our system. We have to,
No, so the water that does hit our system,
No, it's not hitting our system, but it's hitting a water body system in our community that we're saying we want to have healthy streams for fish and all that. What's going in there from that discharge?
So not with the Abernathy properties, but other properties that likely do discharge directly to a stream might then go through a city-owned culvert downstream of that.
Well, if you're talking about retaining the runoff on site, sorry, and getting a credit for that, you wouldn't discharge anywhere.
Right.
So they wouldn't get a credit. But I guess if they only maintain, and they would only get 50% credit if they maintained 50% on site. So they couldn't really even apply for a credit.
Yeah, how are you even measuring that? I don't even know. Okay.
Yeah, they would have to show what portion of their impervious area is being directed
Directly
to
to
a
a
retention
retention
facility, yeah. And show that that retention facility is sized to infiltrate.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that'd be different than how we're doing it now, though. Because you're discharging into the water body directly, so you're not retaining 100% of it on the site, right? So I think it's a policy decision on if you want to give an exemption for this straight discharge into a water body.
Yes, that's right, you're not doing it that way now.
We're not.
Yeah. You're saying there's an exemption for either keeping it on site or discharging it to a stream.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd rather have them keep it on site than unfiltered system going into the,
It's,
maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but I'm kind of viewing this, are you using the city's system or not? And if you're discharging into the stream, you're not, but there is still cost associated with it,
Yes.
which would be recouped by the administrative fees that you would not be exempt from. That's how I'm looking at it.
even if it isn't going into our system, there's still an impact.
Correct, and so you would still pay a fee to cover that cost, right?
So I think, like that example I kind of just shared, a property discharges directly to a stream, and then it travels within that stream, it goes into a culvert, it comes out an outfall. The city is the responsible party for that outfall. We've handled a handful of outfall projects. They're not cheap, they're not easy, there's a lot of permitting. And so even though it might go into a stream, if it touches any city infrastructure, does it qualify, or is it only a direct discharge to a stream with no downstream city piping?
How about this? No credit for the administrative part. The other 50%, let's just use your example, 50%, if I retain all of that on site, I can get 100% credit on that.
Yeah.
If I'm discharging into the body, I can only get up to a 50% credit.
50% of the 50%.
50% of the 50% if I'm discharging into a stream. Because you're still using some city assets.
Exactly.
I think the on-site detention is the easy one. It's
Right.
the discharge, it's hard to quantify that impact, right? Because it'd be great if all the discharges were within another jurisdiction, we didn't have to worry about it. But we are the end of the road, so we're picking up,
We're at the bottom of the hill.
we're
Yeah.
picking up a lot of water from a lot of places, in the city, outside the city, 213 to farmland, so we get, what we see in our water quality when it gets to us leads to, I would argue, some higher standards that we have to do, so those impacts are there.
Yeah.
In some ways, so it'd be nice to recoup them.
So when it's being held and retained on site, does it eventually go somewhere?
It goes into
Into
the ground,
table.
and it is considered to get filtered that way. There's a filtration.
In the system that is holding it?
Yeah,
Okay,
and then
that's what I was
it also
thinking.
cools off and provides benefits
That's right.
for temperature and water quality by the time it gets to a creek. I will add that in the NPDES permit, I didn't put this on the list, but there is also a requirement to address what's called hydromodification. And that is that we're sending more flows to our creeks right now than we did pre-development. And that's causing them downcutting and erosion. And so you also have a hydromodification program for your streams. So there is a program that you have to cover your streams in some ways from a water quality and water quantity standpoint. So there is that element for the streams.
Yeah. So if everyone was okay with Commissioner Mitchell's proposal, we can start to write something that looks, what that looks like.
I have two questions. First is getting to what the mayor said about some kind of periodic review for these exemptions. What would that look like in terms of staff capacity?
It's a good question. I don't have a great answer.
That's what I worry about.
So
that.
the only thing I can think of that's a similar type of situation is our reduced rate program, which has an annual application where I'm hoping Matt's going to correct me if I get this wrong, but you fill out an application, you identify all of your dependents, everyone living in the home, your annual income. It's an annual application process to be qualified for reduced rates. I do not know what the workload is for that. I do not know. So that's something we could look at and come back with kind of the code changes and what that might look like, which really becomes a little bit of our question for our second topic tonight about consistency amongst our utility services.
Okay, so yeah, that would be some information to bring back for us to decide if there is a periodic review
Because I
of
mean,
that.
it shouldn't be, like I said, it shouldn't be carte blanche. You just
I agree.
You have no responsibility, you just get the thing and then you.
But we need to have the
also don't know if
capacity to do it.
I understand that,
Yeah.
yes, and that's a
Recertification is
question,
appropriate.
you know.
What was that?
I said, I also don't know if annual recertification, like
I
that
don't know if it's
seems.
annual,
Right.
but some,
The other question that I have is how often are we going through our utility data to ensure that we don't have people who ought to be paying that are not, as you had identified in this process?
I don't know. I know we've had some internal discussions about trying to do some auditing of our utility billing, and I don't know if Matt's team does some of that.
well, we should be doing it on a, maybe not every year, but it's kind of like doing a financial audit. You know, we have state laws, but I'm not saying it's to that degree, but I mean, we should be checking because, surprise, we don't want to find out that we have been charging people, the rest of the community is holding these other people who are not
Yeah.
paying their fair share. I don't think you heard the question, Mr. Zook. We were talking about how often do we, or will we be doing, or how often do we audit our utility billing? To make sure that we're capturing all the things that we should be capturing.
Matt Zook, Finance Director. We don't have a regular review of all of the rates that are in the system because they just don't change that often. Once a property has that designation for, say, a stormwater, I mean, unless it's developable, it doesn't change that often. So we do review our fees annually when we change them. And we do have an audit cycle on that. So when we are indexing the fees, or I know that Josh engineering has done some review on some of the, it's really more the property or the driver behind it, not so much the rate. We review the rates, but not necessarily the driver of, say, the impervious square feet or the ERU.
Not so much the rate, but, are we capturing all of the properties that should be paying? Do we check that to say, oh, wait a minute, that property should have been paying this fee all along, and why weren't they? But,
Yeah, we have to go back and do that, I guess. We don't have a regular cycle on that, but we have our GIS system and we have our engineers that are out in the field. And we do communicate as well with, the operations team. They're out putting in the meters and those sorts of things. So we also rely on our monthly reads, the meter readers that go out and do that. So they'll report back, things that are new or developed. So some of the stuff that we're dealing with is more of a technical part that the UB team doesn't do. It'd be more offline with coordination with the engineering department.
so your thought on that is we're
Maybe we ought to have some sort of system.
process in place
Yes.
to evaluate that?
I mean, maybe it isn't, and hopefully it isn't a huge issue,
No.
but just for consistency.
Yeah. I would agree. Okay, thank you. I know there's not a lot of wool in here, but I just saw a moth fly by, but it was like, where was that going? Maybe those are wool, who knows? All right, so second consistent thing. Sure, you need the clicker.
All right, good evening, Dana Webb, Public Works Director. And so tonight, I'm going to walk you through an overview of our utility service charges code within our Oregon City Municipal Code for consistency review. So I'm going to kind of walk you through it. There was a memo. I'm a paper person, so I did print out some of these matrix. If someone would like a copy of the matrix, I have it as a slide, but because it's kind of the basis where everything kind of comes from, I wanted to be able to make my notes right on it and be able to kind of see it all together. So
Thank you.
So I'm going to just walk you through the service charges and the code sections for each of the 4 utilities, a brief overview of how the reduced rate and financial assistance program works, discussion around delinquent charges and lien authority for those accounts, what our code and utility billing policy has related to a look-back period, which is that period when we had the discussion around the stormwater fee exemption and how far back should we look for that, what our code says and doesn't says about appeal process, and then kind of wrap that up with all of those items in this matrix, and then a handful of questions for you about our utility codes. So the 4 utilities tonight that we'll talk about is our storm drainage, sanitary sewer, water, and pavement maintenance. Each of those has its own section in our municipal code, and that talks about how we assess those charges. So the first topic is our reduced rate or financial assistance. So if you are approved for a reduced rate, which is that annual application process, the base fee for your water, sanitary sewer, storm drainage, and pavement maintenance is lowered by 1/2. Additionally, your water consumption charge is lowered by approximately 20%. And so currently, we administer this program based on the utility billing policy, which allows that. Technically, our city code does not allow a reduced rate for storm drainage, but our utility billing policy does. Sanitary sewer, water, and pavement maintenance have a code section related to a reduced rate. So ideally, if we want to continue offering the reduced rate, cleaning up the code to state that seems appropriate. That just gives staff consistency in administering these utility service
And this
charges.
is all related to residential, correct?
It's related to all residential and commercial.
Okay.
Additionally, we have a financial assistance policy, which is not in any of our codes, but that essentially utility billing works with folks that need additional time to make their payments. So that is not a codified program, it's just a policy within our utility billing group. For delinquent charges and lien authority. So our storm drainage code strictly states we're not allowed to lien for unpaid storm drainage bills. It does state we can use collection or other legal efforts, but
How would that happen?
it's a good question. This is straight out of the
They
code.
don't pay it separately. It's all one thing.
Part of why we're noting the inconsistencies amongst the four utilities.
Are there any state laws regarding this, where we can have lien authority or not?
Probably.
Carrie, you say, nodding her head no. Okay, thank you.
In our sanitary sewer code, for delinquent payments, we reference our water code, and liens are allowed for sanitary sewer non-payment. In our water code, for delinquent payments, we note ability to shut off the water, and we do allow liens. And then in pavement maintenance, we again mention that collection or other legal efforts, and we reference our water code again. And then liens, it does not state anything, but it does say a reference back to the water code. So just, I'm not sure how utility billing moves forward with liens today, but having a code that was more clear would likely be helpful from a lien and delinquent payment perspective. Look-back periods. So that look-back period is the amount of time we would look back to adjust past usage, billing errors, or exemptions if they're applied for and approved. So our code currently has no time period for storm drainage. Sanitary sewer has no code. Water has no time period. Typically, those water lookbacks would be tied to a leak issue, where like the storm drainage ones would be tied back to that request and approval for an exemption. Our pavement maintenance code is very clear that you can only look back 30 days. And that also states, I'll save that for my next slide, sorry. Looks back 30 days, and that it generally would be a dispute noted by the customer. And then we have a utility billing policy that states that we look back 6 months when no evidence exists of when the error was determined. Or, so in the example of a water leak, if we can show with billings that it looks like it went back 9 months, then they would have that evidence of the error. And so then in that case, they would look back more than the 6 months. So inconsistencies again in our utility billing policy and our codes that have no time period for most of them and a 30-day for a pavement maintenance. Appeal processes. For storm, sanitary sewer, and water, there is nothing in the code about how to appeal it. Historically, for the storm drainage, when we've not come to an agreement on the exemption, we've brought it to City Commission. for approval. Our pavement maintenance code, which is our most current code, does have a very, in comparison, detailed process. You have to apply for the appeal within 30 days. Nothing beyond that 30 days is appealable, and that decision by the manager is final and not appealable to the city commission. And then our utility billing policy doesn't state anything about appeals. So here is our matrix.
Could you stop for, so have you ever had anybody appeal the pavement? I mean, I'm trying to even understand what they'd be appealing. I don't.
Trips, because the pavement maintenance utility fee is based on trips, so we use the IT manual.
Right.
So I imagine if you
Okay,
could,
that goes back to that issue we
if you-
had with Danielson.
if you could come in and show through a
Okay.
traffic study that my trips are less than the IT manual, there'd probably be a request for a reduction. I guess I'd preface this by saying, we do not get a lot of appeals. We
had
don't
one
get a
from-
lot
We had
of
one from
challenges.
Danielson Supercenter, I
The-
remember that now.
The stormwater exemptions, I think, are the ones we've seen a couple of. But generally speaking, it's a meter read, right? Or, maybe there was a bad read, right? Or, we'll see water leaks, right, is a common one, right? So I think staff does a good job of working with folks on that. So don't feel like this is like we're dealing with this every week. Like, these are very rare, but I think Dana brings up a good point of just, if we're gonna do this, if we can get some consistency, so that every option isn't kind of a unique path in a different direction from, essentially the same appeal process, right? And remember, a lot of this is driven by water meter read. These aren't like we're making monthly calculations on every water bill and property in the city every month, right? I mean, I think what Matt was trying to point out was kind of once it's set, it's set. There's not a lot of changing going in there other than, okay, how many cubic feet of water did they consume this month off the meter read, right? It's not like we're changing the formulas or the impervious area or anything like that. So, like, don't feel like this is like some dire thing. I think we're just trying to bring consistency since we're in here changing some things.
Okay, well, I can understand the water and the pavement. I'm not sure I understand how somebody would dispute a sanitary sewer charge unless for some reason their line breaks and it's not going through the system. I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how that would even work.
Well, I think the point is just to have the process there.
No, I get that.
In case somebody does come up with some reason to be able to.
Well, I'm trying to
if they
even
want to
understand, even at its most extreme, what is the, what is the unintended consequence of a sanitary sewer exemption? I'm just trying to even get it in my head, what would be an example of somebody coming in and say, oh, I didn't use the sanitary sewer this month much these last 3 months. Why am I being charged X? I don't know what would be the.
I mean, the only thing I can think, right, is that we charge sewer off of water usage, right? So if you have a water leak, because that meter read is
Sure.
going to be high, then your
Right.
sewer bill
It's
is
going to be high,
right?
right? So I see that,
Yeah,
but
but yeah, no, it's not like.
Not
oh,
separate.
Oh, I've disconnected my sewer
Sewer,
and
so-
I'm draining it all into my water table, my water that I'm infiltrating.
Yes.
No, that's probably not what's going to happen.
okay, good, because that was the extreme part. I thought, oh, no, we don't want that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I personally have experience with the water usage issue, and there was a leak, and they went back, certain period of time, and it was pretty reasonable, very easy to deal with. There was,
I can't think of any I've dealt with. I mean, the only, hypothetically, a county island, someone's still on a septic, they hooked up water. Maybe we're billing them for water and sewer when they're still using their septic and they're not hooked to our system, right? I mean, this is so rare.
rare, it's very rare.
Yeah, and like you said, it's mostly, when we started looking at this from the storm drainage perspective, related to the topic we just talked about, it was like, our codes aren't quite the same in each of our utilities. And then just really understanding, should the processes be managed at a staff level? At what point could or should they be able to be appealed to the city commission? So, because I can't keep two slides, I'm going to move to my question slide, and then you've kind of got your matrix there. So questions tonight. Do you support amendments to the municipal code to support consistent methods for assessment and collection so that delinquent charges and lien authority, because they are not consistent across the utilities?
Well, they should be.
I mean, they all come on the same bill.
Yep.
So it seems like it would make sense that there's some consistency there.
Yes. Have we ever had anybody come in and they come in and say, oh, I'm only going to pay for my sanitary sewer and I'm not paying for the rest of the bill?
I believe so. Only because when we had the discussion around the stormwater exemption, they were not paying their stormwater fees.
And so they always had a delinquent on their bill. They kept rolling over probably.
Or what about a scenario where somebody has their water shut off and they calculate, like, I'm going to pay enough to cover the water portion, but it's not going to cover storm drainage?
I don't think they allowed that. You know, if they're separate, it's all, like you said, it's all one bill. So if you're delinquent,
Could you run the scenario by me again? You said.
Yeah, so, according to current practices, right, so if somebody is delinquent on their water bill, right, their water can be turned off. But again, it comes on one bill.
Right.
So what I'm saying is in a scenario where somebody's had their water shut off because they're not paying their utility bill, if they were to say, okay, here's all my back charges for the water portion specifically, adding in whatever it is, X amount of dollars, but it doesn't cover, for example, the storm drainage piece. Would we turn the water back on?
It happens so very infrequently.
I know, it's a very odd
It's
scenario.
really more.
but it has happened, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we have anybody currently that's in that scenario, or even, like Tony, kind of like what Tony said, I mean, I get so little, appeals to me as the second manager up that I don't, there are some people that do make a more point of, hey, I don't really agree with this, but I think we handle it pretty much as all or nothing. I mean, you're kind of getting the service as a package, and
agree.
we don't really bill out these pieces separately. So, we work with people to, make payment arrangements and those sorts of things, but I don't think there's been anybody that's really stuck that out so long that your water's off just because of that. So, and kind of like what Tony said, that most of these fees are driven off of the water consumption anyways. PMUF and transportation is not, but like your sewer and your storm is, based on consumption. So they're all kind of interlinked.
So general consensus that we should be consistent with delinquent and lien. Okay.
Yes.
The next one is a consistent look-back periods for billing issues. So currently, we have no identified look-back period within our code. Utility billing uses a 6 months when when the date of the error cannot be established.
And 99.9% of it is water.
Except these storm exemptions.
Right, but I
that
mean,
want to look back.
they're tied together.
Yeah, usually you're going to see, a spike in the water bill, right? And usually it's caught, 2, 3,
Yeah, I mean, I
It's not
personally have had
typical to
it,
see
not
it go
here in
on
Oregon
for
City,
years.
but I've had that happen, and it was immediately noticeable
Like,
in the next
whoa, what
water bill.
happened here?
Yeah.
And the city worked with me, and we got it
Yeah, that's
figured
what I
out.
said my
Again, it's
experience
not
has
Oregon
been.
City, but
Yeah.
it didn't take me several months to notice that I had a
In
water
Oregon
leak.
City, it was like I got the one reading, and then I saw the next one, and I said, I think we have, I mean, it literally went from, it was uncharacteristic, and even staff said, yeah, looking at your bill over time, that is not something that your water bill was spiking like that. And we had a leak. That's what it was. And it was, like I said, it was reasonable what they went and looked at. I mean, I don't think, I think in terms of the look-back period, tying the water and the sewer together is fine. I'm not sure how we do a look-back for storm drainage.
Well, same way, if it's been billed wrong, you look back 6 months and fix it. I don't have a problem with, if we're already using as a billing policy, 6-month look back, I would be in favor of just having it be a 6-month look back all the way across.
Yeah.
I love that answer.
But,
I
But
just want to put out, with the, you know,
Well,
for
let's
the.
hear the others, let's
Well,
hear
no,
it.
just for the stormwater exemptions we did, we went back way further than 6 months. So I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
Right.
just as long as everybody's okay with it, I'm fine with it. I think it's great,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But just know.
that just kind of speaks to the reason to have a policy. It
Well, I was going to say, we
Make it
went way
much
further
easier
back
than just
because
sign up.
would have been a lot easier to say only 6 months.
Okay,
yeah,
great. That sounds good.
I didn't support that when it happened, so.
Okay?
Okay, the exemptions, we talked about the storm exemption, one earlier this evening.
These have based on specific criteria. Yeah, so,
So there are no exemptions for sewer and water. We do have the exemption for pavement maintenance, which is if your property is vacant, you are not charged a pavement maintenance fee.
are you talking about vacant in terms of like no improvement on it, that it's just bare land? Okay, because to me, putting asphalt on it is improved. That's not, it's maybe vacant, but it's improved in some way.
I want to peek real quick. I believe,
There's still something running off of it.
it might state if it's vacant as in not
Unoccupied.
So if you turn off your water meter because you're not utilizing the space, and you're not either living there or running a business out of it from a commercial or industrial perspective. So I want to double check that. Yes. I believe it does allow a waiver for a period of time if you have no use on the property, even though it is improved. So you have an asphalt parking lot, your tenant moves out, you have an empty commercial building, and you can request a waiver of your pavement maintenance fee because you are not creating traffic.
Let me
And
ask
then
you,
your sewer and your water
Dumb
is going to be
question.
lower because your consumption is going to be lower, right? But we still charge the base rate, right?
what about these private properties that are vacant, but yet somebody's using them as a staging area for construction? It's improved now in some way. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff on it. It isn't vacant anymore.
Often those don't have a water meter
Okay,
and a
good. If
utility
they don't have a
account.
water meter or no utilities, yeah, I'm good with that then.
Dana, a question. Do we have properties in the city where there's a sewer line in the street in front, but they're not connected and are on a septic tank?
Yes, as long as their septic has not failed, they are not required to connect to
Okay.
it.
You're only talking about residential.
Right.
They could have water.
Yes.
Do they pay the sewer charge if they're not connected?
They shouldn't.
Pardon?
They shouldn't be paying the sewer fee if they're not connected.
Why are we allowing
Okay,
people
so
to
wouldn't
connect
that,
to our
wouldn't that
water
be
and they
an,
don't?
wouldn't that be
they're
an
not in the
exemption
city limits?
on here then?
Well, but if they don't have a connection, then in theory, they're not even able to use the service, so.
Because they're using
Okay,
their
yeah.
septic, self-contained
Right.
septic
We've
on
got-
site.
Yeah, we've got
Right.
people on
That-
Central Point
okay.
Road that are doing that
Okay,
probably.
that to me is an exemption from paying the sewer bill.
Right.
but-
Correct, yeah, but like
Yeah,
they'd still
because
pay,
you're just not connected.
right, you'd still pay PMUF, right, you're still driving on our roads.
Right,
You're
sure.
probably
Right,
hooked
they'd
to
be
our
paying all
water for a
that.
utility bill, most likely, unless you're on
Got
a
it.
well, which, I mean, I don't think there's very many wells left in Oregon City.
There's a few.
A few, I mean, we're talking, these are such the exception to the rule.
Yeah, okay.
There's that lady that had the well left over on her property that had them mixed up. They were paying each other's water bills. She was using her well that she had on her property for her garden.
Remember that one?
I remember that. That was quite interesting.
All right, so I think that brings us to the appeal. So the question is the staff decision based on a code that states 6 months a final decision, or is there an opportunity to appeal that to?
Sounds good to me. I don't think I want those things coming here.
I think providing clarity
Will help,
reduces the ambiguity that led to appeals.
right?
I think, by providing this actual dates and criteria, you take out the subjectivity that led to needing to come to the commission, in
Right.
my opinion. So maybe we write it, you guys can think about it, see what it looks like when it comes back. We can always change, final decisions of the commission. I mean, it's not that hard, but like I said, I think the goal here is to make it consistent, so there's not, we're getting in the land use world of clear and objective and out of the subjective, right? The more clear and objective it is, hopefully we can reduce the opportunities for arguing about.
Well, if anyone has issues, it'll come to us at some point from the public. anyway.
Regardless, right? Yeah.
They're going to want to come and have their day, but we can say, well, here's the code and,
I guess I'd be a little tempted to maybe make that 60 days instead of 30 days. The appeal period.
I mean, if you have a water leak, you know it, right? I mean, people that let this linger on, I just don't understand how they
Well-
would do that.
There's other situations other than water leaks. It just might not be so obvious. I mean, either way, I would allow people 60 days to file an appeal.
If we have an appeal.
Yeah, I'm okay with it staying the way it is. Any
Anything else?
strong feelings, 60 to 30?
I don't have strong feelings either way.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Nobody has strong feelings about it. Okay. Anybody need a break? Okay, let's take as little as needed recess. We'll be back when we're back. All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order with yet another one of our exciting departments, economic development.
Most exciting.
Well, it's one of the most exciting.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
Huh?
But the other one was the best.
Yeah, the other one.
Yeah.
This is the most, well, there's the best and then there's the most exciting.
All right, you got 7 more you got to name now.
I know, I'm on it.
Well, Mayor,
Is he complaining?
no, yeah, he is, but we'll overlook him. It's always good to sit down with the greatest mayor in America.
I think we need some really, really tall boots here because it's gotten really deep in here.
When did it turn into a, whose cabinet meeting?
Trying to think of ways to capture the excitement and excellence of our departments.
Good evening, everyone. On October 7th, if you recall, the Arts Commission and the City Commission met together in a joint session to update and clarify municipal code that governs the Arts Commission, and also to develop clarify the municipal code with regard to the mural arts, or the art murals. And those were the two items that we discussed, in addition to a letter of intent from an art coalition. The Arts Commission submitted its recommendations on both of those codes, in addition to submitting that LOI. So tonight, we have those 3 items to discuss, and we're glad to have with us our able city attorney, Kara Richter, to start off with at least, I think you're going to start off with the municipal code for the arts. And I'll turn it over to you.
So before she starts, I would say that what I've heard from several of our commissioners is that the goal is to try to make it simple and clear to get more murals in Oregon City. I've asked people have asked me, said, why don't we have more murals in Oregon City? And several of the commissioners have made comments about the same thing. So hopefully this will get us there, because before it was confusing.
Okay, so what we've included in the packet is our red lines for revisions to chapter 2.26. This is the provisions that the Arts Commission is organized around. I believe they made red line changes, and then I edited and added some comments of my own. Some of those I resolved with staff. Some of them most of them I think are resolved with my edits, but I'm open to any other feedback that you all have. I mean, these are just organizational provisions. We can go through them one by one if you want to, or you can give me feedback on issues that jumped out at you. How would you like to proceed?
Gentlemen?
Well, I don't think we need to go through it line by line.
No, but I mean, we go through each section. If there's no comment, we just move on.
Okay, so the first substantive provision has to do with the members and the terms. Established 9-member committee appointed by the mayor. 60% of the members have to reside in Oregon City. And 60% of the members, it doesn't have to be the same members who live in Oregon City, have to have some expertise in art forms. Any feedback on that?
I don't like the 60, and I told them this, I don't like the 60% of members riding the city. If there's 9 members, why don't we just say this many have to be city residents? That keeps it clean.
Because if you don't have a full 9, then how many is it?
Well, the assumption is that there's always going to be 9, and
But that doesn't work that way. We have vacancies all the time.
we haven't had it on this one. Seems to be lots.
The problem
It
is
doesn't say 60% of the members who are currently serving.
Yeah, well,
It says at least 60% of the members shall reside. So members currently serving, members, the total number of the 9, what are we basing the
well,
60%
if it's not a
on?
person sitting in the chair, there's not a member. So if you only have 7 members, the thing about the 60% is that you can always calculate how many of them should be in the city.
I think it's just simpler to say a number. We have on
Okay.
the other commissions, we don't say 60% of the planning commissioners can live outside the city limits or in. We say you can have 2 that are.
There is up to 3, up to 2 on some of the other ones,
Yeah, I looked them up too.
but they're not anywhere close to, I guess they're not anywhere close to 60%.
I mean, if we want to make sure that 5 or 6 members are in the city limits, then just say it.
Is there anybody else? Any other input? Okay,
There was a
so,
lot of discussion about this at the Arts Commission, went back and forth, so.
so I guess what we could do is allow the commission to vote on that particular, note the
Well,
difference.
let's just keep moving on.
Okay,
Just note that that's
we'll note it.
noted.
I would just say, right, we have a full commission, right? So 60% of 9 is 5. I assume we're rounding down, right?
You're right.
So we fill it, right? So you got 5 and 4, 5 out of the city, 4 in the city, right?
It's just
Potentially.
the opposite to me. There should be more residents who live in the city than not on the city.
60%, so 5 are in the city, 4 can be out of the
Okay,
city.
so let's say 2 withdrawal, so now we're down to 7. So are we doing 60% of 7, or are we doing 60% of 9?
60%, 9. To me, the number's always to 9.
Okay.
Whether they're all filled or not. Because when you're looking for somebody to fill that, you're saying, oh, we've got, and I did the whole calculation this last time with staff. Okay, we've got these people applying, how many are in the city limits, how many aren't? Does it meet their qualifications? And we managed to get everybody in the right slot. And that was just too much work.
Yeah, I do actually agree that it's easier to just say X amount of seats can be folks out of the city.
Whether they have
rather than a
full
percentage.
7 or they have 9.
Yeah.
It's the number of,
And what happens if you drop below that? You can't function.
no, you can still function.
If you drop below,
Say the
He's saying
numbers-
if we have
say the
8
numbers-
members, we
say
have
the
1
number's
vacant
5.
position.
sure.
Let's say we have that, just like we just had we had two slots open. So calculating all the people who lived in the city limits and calculating the people who didn't, the appointments were based on, didn't we have 2 in the city limits and 1 not? And that brought it up to the number. So that made a difference in who we were looking at to appoint, even though it was pretty evenly split. I mean, they all would have been good, but
I
the
think
ones
the
that,
idea is this is for when we're soliciting for appointments, not our makeup at any.
Given time.
Given time. I mean, a
That's what
person
I'm
could be
thinking.
absent, a person could have retired, we could be, I mean, you have, the only requirement is that we have a quorum.
right, and we're
Yeah.
looking for new
And then we
members.
solicit for new members, and we are recruiting new members, and we take members based on these criteria.
It could be a quorum of people who don't live in the city and 1 person who does. That would technically be a quorum.
Because that would be what happens one night, or because we've lost some members.
Right.
It's not like we stop functioning
Right.
during the interim.
So when we were looking for new people, we needed, the way the commission looked at it, they said, okay, we're looking for 2 people who are in the city and 1 can be out. And that met the criteria that they had at the time. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter whether there's vacancies, we're still going to continue to have that same number. And when we recruit, if we have 5 members in the city and we're missing 1, when we're recruiting, we're looking for a member to fill that one.
And we can make it clear that this is for recruiting. In recruiting, vacant seats. The
That's it.
shitty shall. Does that make sense? And, I mean, we can go with, five city resident members.
Right. We could have 7 of the 9 be city residents. It's not
At
saying.
least 5.
Yeah, it says at least, yes. But no less than that.
Okay, moving on?
Yeah.
What's different about this one, all of the other ones that have that residency requirement put a maximum number of non-residents instead of
Right.
a minimum number of residents.
Well, we could turn it around like that to make it more parallel.
And so, I mean, 60% of 9 is always going to be 60% of 9. So just saying a maximum of 4 members may be,
Non-residents.
non-residents. for
Non-residents.
instance, And just, that's.
Yep.
Leave it at that. So, I mean, that's clear.
Yeah,
Easy
our
to read.
artist community is fairly broad. We got a lot of people that are in
The
the
theme is
arts
consistency, that keeps it
that
consistent.
are,
Yeah.
yes.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, we've got mayor appointment, you can't serve more than 2 terms.
Time out. Sorry, this is the last comment I have on these. Defined term. What happens if somebody is appointed and has a year? They fill out a year. Does that count as a term? And I bring it up because it happens.
Yes, it does.
The term is 4 years, I think?
I thought they were 3.
3 years. Okay.
Right. Does that have to be 2 full terms?
It's up to you. I mean, this occurred to me, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time slicing and dicing it for Arts Commission members, but
Do we-
we can.
I don't have an issue with the Arts Commission not having any term limits. I mean, these are people that are artsy, and they're, some of them have self-selected off because they had other things they wanted to do. I don't know if it's critical.
Well, I mean, we could make it no more than 6 years. And then it doesn't matter when their term starts and ends, right? They can serve 6 years and that's it. I mean, if you want to have a deadline.
I don't think it matters either way. I mean, if you want to say 6 years.
Yeah, there are people who come and go in this community all the time.
Exactly.
And they want to participate, and if someone is there forever and a day, it doesn't give people an opportunity to participate. So it does make sense to have some kind of limit on the term.
Sure.
So is it, yeah.
Well, it says, yeah.
So it says 3 years, and they want to run again, they can do it for another 3 years at 6 there.
I think to your point, Mike, I think a term is 3 years.
That's-
So if you get appointed to fill out the remainder, if I resign with 1 year left, you get appointed, right?
That's not a term.
To me, that's not a term, right? It's kind of like in the code, right? You can be elected to
Same for
4 full
commission, yeah.
terms as for the city commission. So you can be appointed. That doesn't
Yeah,
count
and then you
towards
can
your
still
fully
run for 2
full.
terms.
What you just said, it says full.
That's what I
So
mean.
could
So
we,
to
could we
me,
add that in there, just
Four-year
say?
term.
It'd be
no more than 2
cleaner to
full
just say
consecutive terms?
2 3-year terms is your,
Right.
it counts as your time. So if you got appointed to fill a vacancy for a year, that's not a full 3-year term appointment. To me, that's the
It
cleanest.
doesn't matter to me, I just wanted to make sure we're clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
And is there a period where they would then qualify to be able to come back? Like our commission term limits, the 2-year break? Or is it, you've done your 6 years and you, like the President of the United States, you may never come back?
I don't think we want to, anyway, I think that if somebody serves 2 3-year terms and they're done, and let's say some extraneous thing happens and they want to come back, they can reapply.
Okay, so we should probably say that.
Well, if you say you can't serve more than 2 3-year consecutive terms, then a year or 2 passes, you could come back and.
Right, but
And apply for.
I thought that we were just talking about saying 6 years.
We're not saying, that was
Okay.
my mistake.
Okay.
I think we're going with 2 3-year consecutive terms. Is the
max,
language.
Right.
Yeah.
And then do you feel like we have to say, and, an applicant must take 1 year off and they could reapply if they want to, or?
No, I think
I
that's
think it's,
fine. I just thought that we were going in a different direction with something that was previously suggested.
I think for appointed positions like the Arts Commission or the PrAC or whatever, if they want to come back, yeah, let them come back. They don't have to get appointed. They can apply. It's not automatic.
Okay. Officers, I don't think we've changed the substance of this any. We've just reorganized and cleaned up the language a little
Yeah,
bit.
they
Any
just serve for
comments?
1 year. Yeah.
Okay,
Just real quick, as we're talking about membership and officers, I'm wondering if now would be a good time for us to discuss if we do want to have a commission liaison to the Arts Commission. Again, it's not something that I'm necessarily opposed to, but, and my understanding is that the mayor is still attending the Arts Commission meetings and sitting up at the dais, even though,
They asked,
well, I've actually talked to a couple of them, and that's not what they've told me. And in fact, I've heard that some of them feel a little intimidated, to be honest. So that's not what I've heard from the arts commissioners themselves. And so I think that if we are going to have a representative and a liaison, which I don't think necessarily could be a bad thing, it ought to be spelled out
when they
because.
changed officers, I said to them, I said to the two officers, I said, do you still want me to come to the meeting? Because it started at one set of officers, I went to the next one, I said, because if you don't, then I won't.
So maybe you should ask again.
I did ask Josh and the vice chair.
But you said the last time that you asked all of them and that they all said.
No, I didn't say all of them.
You
I
did say
said-
that.
When the first Arts Commission came into being and they were meeting, there was the same group of people, I asked them, after they asked me, I said, are you sure you want, they said, would you please come and let us know what's going, I said, I'll be happy to. I said, it's not official, but I said, I'll be here.
Then you shouldn't be sitting at the dais.
It doesn't matter. I don't know why we're getting nitpicky about where I sit when I go there.
I just think that since we're talking about the membership right now, that it ought to be something that we discuss, because I don't think that it should be within the power of one person to determine that I'm just going to attend these meetings, but it's not official, but I'm still going to sit at the dais. I'm just uncomfortable with that.
Well, then let's get through this ordinance and then we can talk about that.
I feel like now is an appropriate time.
Well, there's
given the
nothing
topic.
in the ordinance that says there's going to be this or that.
Right, and that's my point.
Do we have in our other codes that there's a liaison?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So for other commissions in there, it says whether or not there's a liaison.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense if we were to have officially a liaison in the Arts Commission for it to be spelled out here. And I personally would like to hear from the Arts Commission if they would like city representation there
Yeah.
formally.
Well, I guess I would say the opposite is this should be fairly consistent. If we have commissions at all that are advisory to the commission, we should have liaison there, and it should be, the same for all. I know for a couple of things that for this commission itself, I know there's been some things in the past year or so that kind of would have benefited a city commission person being there. Right, and it's important to, if there's a conversation that is happening and that commission or group is going kind of off its rails a little bit, it's always nice for the commission to say, okay, well, that's maybe not where we're supposed to be going.
Well, that's what I was asked by them.
And there's a staff person there too, which usually is,
But
covers
sometimes
that,
what
but.
they've asked the staff person, it's
Right.
not comfortable because
Right.
it's,
Well, and there's times that any one liaison from the commission isn't going to have an answer for the
Right,
commission
and if I
either,
don't
but
know
at
the
least is
answer-
aware of what's going on to make a report of it. And this is like saying, okay, well, this was the conversation at the last Arts Commission meeting, this topic came up. So I think it's got to be, if we're doing it for other ones, it should be the same.
Staff is never uncomfortable with saying no.
I think
They aren't.
my question, just for consistency, is
no,
though we
I've
don't have
suggested
city
we-
representative in every commission.
The only two we do are Youth Advisory Commission and the CIC.
Right.
So it is a bigger policy discussion.
Right.
And I agree with what Commissioner Marl is saying.
So-
Whether or not tonight is the night we decide, but
Like, for
kind of
example,
an unofficial, I have a problem with too.
Well, I think there are two things. So first, if it doesn't matter where you sit, then at the next planning commission meeting, I'll go sit up there and observe as well, and it'll make no difference with that logic. And then on the other thing, I think it's interesting to be complaining about nitpickiness, especially from you, because that's the reason why we're
Please,
going through
you know,
this.
we went through this last time.
That's the reason why we're going through this.
I understand. I really think it's not appropriate to have this type of demeanor. Look, we're supposed to be working together to try to make
Absolutely.
something improvement.
Absolutely, and
I-
not just
I
having
am-
one person dictate all of it.
Nobody's dictating
Okay.
anything.
Then we ought to be able to talk about it.
I don't really feel like you're being fair to me. So if you want to speak generically about it, that's great.
Okay, so what I've heard from arts commissioners is that generically, there are members of this commission who are attending their meetings, sitting at the dais, and providing unsolicited feedback. And even though this generic person has said that they were all of the members invited them, these people have said the opposite.
Not this current one. I asked the chair to ask them whether you wanted me to continue to come to their meetings. That's what I asked Mr. Plankton and Rebecca. I'm sorry, I can't think of Rebecca's last name at the moment, it starts with an S. I don't sit at the dais, I sit next to him at the very end.
Which is the same place where I sit in our meetings as an official liaison.
They have asked certain specific things for me to check on for them or to get feedback on, and I have provided that information.
And all of our committees have the right to do that. They have our emails, they have our contact.
But they wanted it right there. I've had the code, I've had things where I've
That's
said,
why there's a
look,
staff person
I've
there."
looked this up, and I said, okay, you wanted to know about that, this is what we did, this is, what was the purpose? They've asked me things like from back when, about the history of the Arts Commission, and he and I are the only two people around that were around when it got started, what was, what some of the things that we did. I've answered those questions. They've answered questions about procedures. We've had discussions about how to get staff resources.
So, which is why we have staff there.
Yeah. These were other questions that staff wasn't able to answer. He was not there.
So there was no staff there,
No,
and you were the
Ann-
only one who?
Ann was there.
Okay, so there was staff there.
Yes. But didn't have the answer to that specific question. Otherwise, I'm just listening, and they may ask me something, or they may say something to the effect of, can we do this? I said, well, yes and no. It depends on these sorts of circumstances. Believe me, as you know what my work schedule is, if I didn't have to go to another meeting,
You don't have to go to another
I know.
meeting.
I wouldn't, but because I was
You
asked.
absolutely do not have to
I know,
go
I
to the
know.
Arts Commission.
I know don't have to. But when I was asked to attend, I said I would try to do whatever I could to attend. So I will ask them at their next meeting by email whether they want me to attend or not. If they do not, then that means I have another meeting that I can be attending instead. I gave them priority because they asked.
We've had this discussion
So
before.
let's move on to the next item.
We should have a larger discussion of liaisons,
Which boards we want to
which
have
one we do it,
representation on?
and which we don't.
I would
Yes.
agree.
Okay,
It's a larger discussion.
okay.
would,
Well, in the meantime, I don't think you should be functioning that way, because you can't take your mayor hat off. And your presence and your opinion creates pressure in one direction or another.
Well, that's your perception.
That is.
Yep, I appreciate your opinion. Please continue.
Sure.
Can I jump in?
Yes,
real quick?
please jump in.
Okay. So for example, under Youth Advisory Commission, the Youth Advisory Commission shall consist of at least 9 youth members and 1 non-voting city commissioner to be appointed by the mayor. So that's kind of the stock language.
Right.
If that's something you'd like us to consider adding here, or if you want to wait and have a larger discussion, of just saying, we have language.
Yeah, put it in there.
We put something similar to that, if that's the route you want to go for this, for the Arts Commission.
We need to discuss it.
So
It's
the-
good language,
Just
Yeah, it
let-
is.
but we
leave it
need
for
to
a different
discuss whether or not we want to
discussion.
do it.
I told them they really needed Rocky there, but that wasn't available to you to them at that time.
Okay, moving on.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we've added a provision about annual reporting, which I believe most of the commissions do every year. And then we've added or sort of clarified the what was the powers and duties. I've broken down into a purpose and mission and then a power and duty subsection, clarifying that the sort of goals of the Arts Commission, but more importantly, the powers and duties component, which authorizes them to review and approve grants, applications, and participate in the grant procurement and process. And I've broken those out into one when they are reviewing private requests. So private property owner makes a request and they are a reviewing body because you've delegated that to them or they've worked with you to create a grant program. Or when they are applying for a grant from some other agency in order to install murals on or public art in partnership with the city. So those are sort of the 2 different hats, and that's why I broke them down in B and C the way I did. Any other feedback for me on that part? Okay. I think the Arts Commission on the policies thought it was important that they are involved in sort of public art budgeting decisions and providing feedback to the commission during budget season biennium discussions. I noticed in D, there's a typo, so I've got to fix that in the 070 policies. Any other feedback on these red lines?
Well, I would think that any discussions about budgeting would come through the specific department, as opposed to them coming individually and lobbying the budget committee, which I don't.
Currently, the funds that the Arts Commission uses is the economic development budget.
And that would be a part of that budget.
Yeah.
So with this language, there would be some economic development would have a meeting with the Arts Commission about, okay, we're putting together a budget, here's how much we think you have, here's what we project you'll have in the biennium, here's what we're going to present to the commission. You would have that discussion with
With them.
the Arts Commission first.
Yes, because they could get more, they could get less.
All right, everybody good with this? Okay, moving on to the murals.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that the concern that started the mural code amendments was the issue of not having clarity about repair and replacement, alterations, changes over time. And that led to a sort of bigger discussion about how the structure of mural regulation works. And so what we've tried to do with these amendments is, one, deal with this question of alterations and identical replicas, that kind of thing, but also make it very clear that every mural party, whether they're a city entity or private, have to get a mural permit, right? So no one is exempt from the standards. Everybody, even the city, has to come and get a public art mural permit and has to comply with the requirements. And that this public art mural review is not about content.
Right.
Say anything, it just has to be made out of high quality materials, it has to be attached in certain ways, it has to be weather tolerable, it has to be graffiti removal proof, those sorts of things, but we're not regulating content. And that's what we've tried to set forward here in these amendments. This section 1528090 public art mural permit review is completely separate and distinct from the question of whether the city should put a mural on the library, right? Those are policy-making decisions, and there the Arts Commission could potentially help meet with the artist and decide what that mural should say, or what kind of image that mural should convey, right? Because in reviewing whether or not there should be a mural in the library, they are acting in a policy-making capacity, sort of like the commission would be. So that's different. That's the only area where the Arts Commission can have a role in content, right? Because it's the city's mural on the library. That's separate than, again, reviewing for a public art mural permit. So does that distinction make sense? And that's why 1528 only deals with the regulatory review of the permit. Okay? Do you want to, I don't know that we need to go through each of these red lines. They're all sort of on the first page, and they all have to do with this alteration question. And we've made it clear that minor changes are allowed, and replication made necessary for replacement and made necessary because of damage is okay, and that there's, sometimes we can't get the exact same red.
Right, yeah.
You know? And so we need to have some kind of substantially similar language that allows, no, we're not gonna put the old mural and the new mural up side by side and nitpick them. I mean, we're gonna generally say they're the same. So that's the language we've got put together here and presented to you. Do you have any feedback for me on those?
I think it cleans up a lot of the ambiguities that were there previously.
One question.
Yeah.
C2 talks about terminating the agreement and removing the mural. And it says that in the case of early termination, removal costs are borne by the owner. What about if I'm the owner and I do the 5 years, but I decide, you know what, I don't want to commit for another 5 years? Who pays for the removal then?
I think the answer is that the owner does, but does the city ever pay for the removal of a mural?
Not to my knowledge. It doesn't pay for removal of a mural.
So I see your point, and I think I noted that in this comment, that we need to make this, the owner always has to remove it.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't have the permit, they have to remove it, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 50 years.
Okay, so we're going to clear that up in
I'll
here?
clean that up, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Council, on page 2, on item 11, I just want to get clarification on that, where it says the mural The mural proposal shall include methods to mitigate the impacts of weather and vandalism, and a commitment to repair the mural surface as necessary for the term set forth in the permit conditions. So, translation.
If a mural exists for more than 5 years, right, it's kind of on a rolling month-to-month basis, right? An applicant doesn't have to come back and get a new permit after 5 years, right? They're just operating under their old permit and they can continue to do that, right? So I didn't want it to say only 5 years because it is not the case that an applicant comes back when their 5 years passes and says, I want to renew my mural permit.
But this one has to deal with mitigation of impacts of weather and vandalism.
Well, it has to do with conditions.
Right.
That might be imposed on your permit. So I get a permit for a mural, it says I have to, stop, mitigate for vandalism. That is a running condition that's gonna last past 5 years if my mural stays up for for more than 5 years. So I just didn't want it to sound like the conditions will expire in 5 years, because they won't. They'll run with the permit for as long as the permit is good.
I see.
But if an owner wants to come in and touch it up or repair it or whatever,
That would be allowed.
that would be allowed, okay.
Okay, so those were kind of the main changes.
That was, yeah.
Questions or changes or anything that we missed?
Better, this is Josh Planton with Oregon City Arts Commission. Just to clarify what I understood.
Excuse me, are you asking to speak at the work session?
Sorry, yeah, I wasn't sure if I could speak, but I had my hand raised for a while now.
Okay, well, I didn't see the hand. I didn't see the hand on the side, so go ahead.
Yeah, the clarifying question is, with the changes that were proposed in the copy that the legal counsel's put together here, would a piece of public art that is done on public property using public funds, either Arts Commission budget or from another department budget or grant fund that we receive, would it require the same application process, easement form, all of that to be completed? And if so, wouldn't that require Arts Commission approval, which means we couldn't be involved in the content review?
So whether or not the city gets an easement is a different question, I think, than whether or not it's subject to review by 1528. 1528 applies to everybody. And the question about whether or not the Arts Commission could be the reviewing body because they were involved has more to do with whether they can sit in a policy-making position and also a reviewing position. But that doesn't change the fact that all public art murals need to be reviewed under this code. Everybody has to do it. I mean, unless we're gonna exempt the city, everybody has to do it.
Yeah, and so that was one of the issues that we were trying to minimize the impact of was, say, for example, the bathroom that's down on, by the elevator. Technically, the mural, the image on the outside of that would be defined as a mural under the code. So we helped review that content and selected artists with the support and input from Public Works when they were putting the bathroom together. However, as the law is written, we wouldn't be able to do that going forward because we would also be the reviewing body of the mural itself. And if the city was exempt from that requirement, which I understand is a common practice with a lot of public art murals like that or public art projects, we could then provide provide input on the content, help the department out, And as long as it's funded by public funds and on city property, we would bypass the quasi-judicial role that we have and be able to participate in the content review.
So the code could be written so that publicly owned or publicly funded art murals are not subject to review under 1528-090. It could be written that way, but it is not written that way now.
Okay. I guess that for the city commission to consider, but that would be one bit of input that that was our intended goal, was to anything that was publicly funded and on public property would not require Arts Commission approval for murals. That was, I think, our intent with that language. So just wanted to throw that out there for your consideration as you make your decision.
I think that there was a concern about being an even playing field where everyone gets approved, whether it's the city or another entity, but everybody gets. We have that for some of our other codes, and everybody is, including the city itself, has to apply for a permit, and it keeps things on an even playing field for everyone.
And public property is a lot broader than city property.
Well, I mean, that's another wrinkle.
It could be the county, it
It's a
could be the
big
school
wrinkle. It could be the
district,
school district, it could be,
yeah.
and if you say public property, it could be a lot more things than just the city.
You know, my feeling is that if the city wants to build a new building,
Right.
it complies with the land use code, and it files an application, and the planning commission can come to the city commission and say, we need to build a new planning office, and the city commission says, yeah, let's build a new planning office, and then they turn around and the planning commission reviews an application for a new planning office. I mean, that kind of relationship happens all the time. I don't really see this as different from that, and I don't really see that wearing different hats and different decision-making roles necessitates exempting city murals, public murals, however you want to define it, from the review.
Was there a concern of the city commission appropriates $25,000 to ECDEV to do murals, public, on city property murals, right? So then the Arts Commission solicits RFP, they receive 3 bids, they pick one, and now they review it. Or I think that's where we were struggling, I think, a little bit, right? And so is there a way to deal with that without exempting? Is that a conflict of interest, I guess, if you're...
So I understand the conflict of interest, and I think the difference is they're awarding the bid. When the planning commission decides they need a new planning office, they're not awarding the bid. They're
Right.
instructing city staff to award the bid.
Right, so
And
but-
I think we could separate this by saying, Arts Commission says, James, go out and solicit 3 bids to build this mural. You know, I think that we could create that separation, that necessary separation, or we could have the city commission review the public art mural part 1528. If we want the arts commissions to have more hands-on approach to what to do with
The design.
With the
and
design.
and yeah.
I mean, there's
So
other
I think-
ways
I
to
think
deal
what,
with it.
I appreciate the comment. I think what we're trying to do is we've struggled with this potential conflict of interest, right? It's hard to be the asking for the project, telling the project what it should be, awarding the money, and then approving the permit, right? I think that's what we're trying to figure out how to address right here.
It seems that the easiest way to do it is, in that situation, is the city commission approves it.
How do you all feel about that? in the one-off where, you know, we're going to have the Arts Commission more involved in the design solicitation, RFP process review, pick a consultant, right? But then the commission reviews the city art on a city building. Well, I don't think it's public. I think,
Right.
I think we're talking
I
specifically
do too,
City of Oregon City properties.
I mean, don't we need to be specific in
I
that,
agree,
right?
we do.
we need to be really
We will.
Because there could be a lot, yeah.
100% agree.
Right, but I assumed we were talking about city, and that's why I want to specify. I mean, to me, if it's on a city building and it's owned by it's owned by the city, then it's the city commission.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, we can make that change. That would address that.
Yeah.
And then the Arts Commission would address reviews of everything else. Okay.
So so this commission's going to review city-owned project with city-owned funds, with city-contributed funds, or just city-owned buildings?
I think we can talk about, I mean, I guess, like, for me, it's like, you know, could there be a process where, let's say the Arts, like you gave that example, the Arts Commission says, James, go, here's the parameters, you now fill that contract. There doesn't appear to be a conflict there.
No.
So it seems like, I mean, I don't want to make this so complicated, like, if we believe there's a conflict, it should go to the commission,
Okay.
right? I mean, just take the conflict out. They can either be involved because a commission really wants to be involved in a certain mural or a certain project, or maybe, you know, a different commission's a little bit more, you know, we want this to be more community. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. I just think we're just trying to avoid a conflict of putting our volunteers in that position and then just giving ourselves the ability to still move a project forward.
Okay. All right, I will make the change. I will make it very clear.
Thanks.
Rebecca, did you have anything you wanted to add? Rebecca? Just want to give her the opportunity. Okay, well, let's move on. If she has something she wants to say, she'll raise her hand. Thank you.
I don't have anything else.
Okay, any
Appreciate
questions?
the feedback.
Okay. Do you want to do the Highway 43 real quick?
Sure. Before you have the LOI, and I drafted it in consideration of the fact that, of the discussion that you had previously about possibly a situation where city funds would be used in another locale and in this coalition. And so this letter really spells out the fact that we want to collaborate, we want to be a part of a coalition, but the funds, if there's going to be art, it has to be spent. If it's going to be our art, it has to be spent within the city boundaries of Oregon City.
Yes, any more mention of that? That's pretty clear.
Yeah. So if there's agreement to that, then we'll have to wait until the city commission meeting to get a
Well,
vote
that's
on
what
it.
they talked about at a meeting, that they weren't talking about having something that was Oregon City money being spent in West Lynn or whatever other town.
Right. Are we all right? Okay.
Let's go forward. Yay. I did not participate in this. They asked me to take a look at it, and I said, I think that what you're suggesting is reasonable, and just get it on the work session agenda.
All right, next.
Revenue sources discussion. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, good.
I raised my hand.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
That's
couldn't
okay, I
find my microphone.
yeah, I called on you twice and you didn't answer, so.
I know, I couldn't find the microphone. I'm
Okay,
so
sorry. Okay. Hi,
yeah,
Rebecca.
the only thing
Rebecca,
that-
just name for the record.
Yes, Rebecca Sierra, Vice Chair. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everyone's help tonight. The only thing I wanted to kind of add to the discussion, especially around the murals, is whatever, I really appreciate everyone trying to simplify this so that, because even the application process that people have to go through to try and get a mural approved. So when we think about like, okay, if there's a scenario where it has to come to city council for approval, how long will that take? And so just kind of keep those things in the back of your mind, thinking about that of like, how can we make this as easy as possible on applicants and city staff and the commission, so that we can get more murals put up in the city. Just because the way that the code currently is, it's been kind of restrictive and a little bit difficult. So one, thank you, and two, that was my comment, just, you know, can we find a way to make this easy on our citizens to be able to apply and get their murals up?
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Understand? Okay.
Thank you.
Are you that's Matt. Revenue fees, discussion, sources.
Did it.
Mr. Zook, sir.
Should I go sit in my usual spot? Sure.
You sit wherever you like. You're the one that can write the checks, you know, you're the man of the hour.
Chair in the corner. There is no fee for my third presence this evening, just the first two.
Just put it on our bill.
Well, I guess I'll kick this off. What we are responding to this evening, the topic at hand is an extension of the discussion on revenue sources and specifically the fee methodology behind various fees that we charge. I think this is the fee evening. It's been the topic of the entire agenda, it seems. And so when we came last time, we walked out with an understanding that you would like to see the methodology behind various fees and how they might be adjusted to address equity in the various payers. And as an example, we're talking about this eSafe fee, the Community Safety Advancement fee. And so what I provided for you in narrative is just an overview of the fee and how it's divvied out between all of the payers. And basically it's a $650 per month fee for most of the utility customers. And then for businesses, it's established as a $650 per month fee, but paid on an annual basis with their business licenses. And so what I've done in numerical form on one of the attachments is basically lay out how that looks and how much revenue it generates in various components of it. And Jacob, I don't know if you could pull up that document. Yeah, there you go, thank you. Guess I didn't anticipate the viewing audience was really small. But you can see in your packet as well that the methodology as it's broken out here is in four different sets of data. The first column on the left is the current universal flat rate model. And I've broken that out between utility bills and business licenses. And so you can see that in the first illustration, no, that's not.
Just trying to get the stuff out of it.
Yeah, it won't hit the screen. Okay. In the bottom of the utility bill section, I've basically laid out all the different categories for utility billing customers, what kind of, whether you're residential, commercial, reduced rate, multifamily, industrial, et cetera. And everybody, regardless of their class, pays $650. And that we have about 15,000, a little over 15,000 units that we bill. basically every business is a one-to-one except for multifamily. So we have 4,300 multifamily units. We don't have 4,300 different, apartment complexes. It's, every unit within an apartment complex pays the $650 in their bill, as part of their bill. That generates about $1.2 million, $1,181,000 in annual revenue. And then right below that, you'll see the business license portion, which is, I've stated it here as a $650 per month flat rate. It's annualized. We have about 1,100 businesses that, for example, have renewed in this 2026 calendar year. And that generates 85,000, a little over 85,000. So a combined rate, total dollars is 1.267 million. And that's how this fee was designed back when it was established. I went and looked at other municipalities, and they've got pretty much a consistent rate. There's an attachment in the packet that demonstrates the different cities that I went and looked at. Not all the same rate. They're generally around the same methodology. It's an amount per month per like a billing unit. And that ranges anywhere from like $5 up to, I think Gresham is $30. I think I reported 15. Maybe it's a different city, but I think what the concept that we were trying to play with was, if we were to weight the payers differently, and I think we had a concept of looking at maybe payers that don't pay this, like say the county. The county, for example, has they're an institutional customer in the utility billing category. They pay $650 per month, regardless of the size. There's no variable rate for them. And so what I did in option one was I basically decided to play with some options. Let's just say that we were to take just the utility billing portion and play with the rate so that maybe the residential, the multifamily paid a little bit lower rate, and the institutional, the commercial was a little higher. And in option one, I have 640 rate, which is a 10-cent reduction to the standard rate, and I threw in $20 for institutional commercial, with the goal being to break even with the current rates. I did hear there was a value that would remain net neutral in concept. We weren't looking essentially to generate new revenue at this point. We wanted to play with the methodology. So you can see that, and I chose 640, and I chose 20 just randomly because I was trying to get to approximately the same amount of revenue, 1.181 million. You can see that 1.180 million is essentially raised with those two separate rates. And the point here is that there are so many residential multifamily payers that pay that rate versus the 92 institutional and a little bit of commercial, that it really takes a lot of, a 10-cent reduction in the common rate really doesn't move the needle a whole lot. You'd have to really do something to target a different category of utility billing customer in order to keep it revenue neutral. And again, I don't have any particular, I chose institutional and commercial because those were the customers that were county, city, churches, et cetera. So option number one just demonstrates a change in the methodology for utility bill customers. Option two is my attempt to demonstrate, okay, let's just say we keep all utility billing rates at $650, but let's change, and let's emphasize paying, having the businesses pay more. For whatever reason, maybe businesses generate, more demand for public safety. what I did do was, under business licenses, right now, every business pays a flat $78 a year. 650 times 12 is $78 per year. But we do have, within our business license methodology, we do have a different rate, or we do have different classes of businesses. A business that's 1 to 25 employees pays a rate, 26 to 50 pays a certain rate, 51 plus pays a certain rate. And that's all what the way the business licenses are assigned. If we were to just modify the CSAFE rate to emphasize, say, the larger businesses, 26 to 50 employees, to $7, and 51 plus to $8, you could essentially, and leave all the remaining smaller businesses, 1 to 25, at the same 650 rate, you'd essentially break even on the amount of business license revenue that you're generating. And I chose to do option 2, just emphasizing the business license model, so that you could see them separately, the 2 different ways that we're collecting this money, the utility billing and the business licenses. Option 3 is a combination of both of those, and you can see that option 1, option 2 together under option 3, those changes generates the same amount of revenue, $1.266 million a year. And so I think where we wanted to come back to the commission to continue the conversation was, here's an example of one of the fees that the city charges. And again, you heard about the utility fees, the stormwater fee, the transportation fee being based on trips, and stormwater being based on ERUs, or impervious area. This one here is an example of how we could play with the methodology. I think what's obvious here is that the weight being primarily on the utility billing customers at a flat rate generates the bulk of the revenue. And so if the goal was still to remain revenue neutral, then the amount of the fee reduction would be relatively small, and you could still emphasize a higher fee for the institutional, commercial, or any category you want, really. But you can see basically by the number of units, that the number of units for residential and multifamily is what pays the bulk of this revenue for the service. Anytime you talk about a fee, I mean, you really do kind of have to assess what makes sense optically, and then just, financially for the customer. Obviously, we're not charging a CSAFE fee based on the number, who calls. You don't pay for police services when you call. So that conceptually has to be spread out across the entire city. Other fees are more, based on the consumption. If your water fee is based on how much you buy, how much you use. So I think that was the presentation I wanted to bring back. I think from there, just generate whether or not where the commission wanted to go. If that's an illustration that's helpful in the concept, great. If there's other fees that we wanted to discuss, we could bring back other fees. But that's an example of the methodology. And I mean, this fee was generated back in 2016. We went for debt in 2018. A 20-year bond for the building that we're sitting in now. And this, Sean and I were just talking about when that fee expires. The fee expires when the commission deems that the purpose of the fee has served its purpose, and we anticipate being able to pay the debt off earlier than 2038. At the rate we're going, keep in mind this was done 10 years ago, and the model for how many customers we would have in the city has varied from the actual results. I mean, we're getting annexation and more growth than we probably anticipated. They probably anticipated conservatively, or estimated conservatively. So I guess from here, I'll turn it back over to you, and you can direct staff as to where you want to go with either a future discussion or any specific goal that you'd like to have.
I think I need to clarify, there's been some questions about the adoption of CSAFE and the duration of CSAFE, and the ordinance itself doesn't talk about an expiration, but the code does. And it says billing and collections in 1336050. The fee will no longer be collected once the city commission determines that costs associated with the public safety facility improvements have been satisfied. That's the end date. So, I mean, I think reading that one could argue when the bond's paid off, right?
Well, I think,
If we have to replace the roof, is that a cost associated with the, I mean, it's not like on January 1st, 2036, this will go away, right? So there is some discretion in there. I think those of you who are here probably remember a lot of the conversations, but, you know, I've been asked, you know, is there an end date? I've always said no, but I do think the code implies one.
I think you and I will both remember that what was told to the public when this was on the ballot is that this was not going to go on forever.
Right.
And that, what I recall at many of the public meetings is that while it wasn't specific, it was implied that when it was paid for, this would be coming off people's utility bills.
And therefore, the answer is maintenance is maintenance.
I have one question and a comment. Okay, so I've got a business license and my business address is my home. Am I paying twice?
Great question, and the answer is no.
You're talking about as a home occupation?
Yes.
That's the only way you can have
Yeah.
a business at your house.
Home occupation.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Home occupation license implicitly are paying it through their water bill, so they're not paying it twice.
Okay. So I guess I'm surprised, I'm glad you ran these numbers. I'm surprised that tipping it more to have larger businesses pay more didn't make more of a difference. Like even if you were to take 51 and over from $6.50 where it is now to $20, it raises about $4,000 a year. So to me, I guess there's no point in messing with it.
I think the struggle was probably well vetted when the fee went into place. I didn't do a deep dive, but there are different methodologies. I mean, we could have chosen to do this based on meter size if you really wanted to, but at some point you have to ask yourself what makes sense. Does it make sense that a 10-inch meter has more demand for police services than a 3/4-inch meter? You might argue that a 51 and plus employee business is something like a Fred Meyer. Maybe that does perhaps demand a little bit more. I mean, there's a little bit of a political and an optical, common sense you got to make here.
Yeah, the logic is there to charge more for a larger business, but we're how many years into it?
Yeah,
We just
and
can't.
between the lowest number and the highest number, it's like $2,000.
Right.
And is it worth the time and effort to reassess and I agree with Mike. I mean, given these numbers, just leave it how it is my.
And I think you run into, this is just, I think, it's interesting because I was surprised at the breakdown of the utility customer versus the business license fee, right? But, this is like when we talk about, just generally in terms of the imbalance between housing and employment, I mean, this is the glaring example of it, right? So even if, let's say you pulled, institutional, city, and that commercial, I mean, there's just, you're at what, 8%, of the total, right? The 1,100 businesses versus the 15,000 resident utility customers. I mean, there's just, if it was closer to like 40, 60, and if the number were bigger, I think you'd have more flexibility. But I think just having such a low business count means we are dependent on the residential side.
Is PMF our only other utility fee? Or is there also one for the CCOM?
No, that's the only other fee besides,
And that one's using the ITE,
yes.
so it's
Yes.
roughly proportional. Okay. Well, I appreciated the exercise, but I agree. It's, given what we would reasonably expect to get out of adjusting the rates. I would just prefer to keep them as they are.
I think the concept that, what I was trying to, Tony and I were wrestling with a bit here was, whether it's a tax or fee, I mean, fees in particular, I think, are generally imposed for a specific reason, a specific purpose. I mean, we've talked about other fees that may generate additional revenue, or, how do we pay for a pool? How do we pay for a park? How do we pay for whatever? I think this at least gives a secondary illustration that not only does the C-Safe not have a lot of wiggle room here, but think about what you are going to base your fees on in the future, and can you measure it? And is it distinguishable from, I think some of the concept that we've had was, like say a transient lodging tax fee is really targeting people that come into our city and use our services in a good way, generate revenue, but there are people that are subject to that fee that come in that aren't residents. I mean, some of these businesses aren't local businesses. They're contractors coming in to do work. So you tap into that versus say you work with a property tax, which is generally for people that own property here. And if you're exempt from property tax, then you're not paying for that service. This utility bill option, I mean, everybody has to pay a utility. The county is exempt from a property tax, but they do pay the C-Safe. Now they only pay $6.50 per meter. You've got a red soils district that's, got thousands of people. Could you design that differently? I think those are the things that, as a secondary illustration here, as you're thinking about the future conversations, what do you tie a fee to and how do you measure it? And then where's the juice worth the squeeze on implementing it too? So. I guess that's all I had.
Not on that, no. Unless you wanted to get more conversation, but it sounded like everybody appreciated the info and.
Yep, thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Careful with the knees there. Okay, future work session agenda items. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions about what the city manager has submitted? Update on city projects. Any questions specifically about anything that was submitted? Any committee reports?
I have nothing.
Could I just give one update real quick?
Please, go ahead.
So.
That's why I let the long pause happen.
I was asked to attend a meeting today with Clackamas County and City Administrator Betts from Gladstone. So for many of you who've been around a while, you know that we've had we've been fortunate to have AMR located at High Rocks on the Gladstone side from essentially Memorial Day to Labor Day. That work has always been absorbed by AMR. It started in about 2002, and it was about $100,000 a year for that service for that time period, and it was donation driven is how it got started. Businesses donated those funds. The donations, stopped over time, and AMR has just been absorbing that in the service that they provide. It's never been a specific service called out in their contract. So we found out today the service is about $240,000 a year for that May, with the training, the gearing up from May through Labor Day. And it's not a service they're going to be able to provide anymore. Gladstone doesn't have 120,000 sitting around. You know, so I think, I just wanted to make you aware that, you know, that was presented to us this morning.
Who from the county was?
I'd have to go pull the list. There were some representatives from AMR and Health and Human, it's run out of Health and Human Services, so their director was there.
So I think what I have been reading about this is that it has saved lives. It's prevented people from doing some crazy stuff, because we've had a lot of drownings in the past where people just, well, they just don't understand how cold the water is. They don't understand what the impact is, and they think they're there to cool off, and they end up losing their lives, which is unfortunate.
So I don't have an answer for you. I'm just making you aware that that's an issue that's been brought up. It's a pretty quick turnaround. Obviously, it's the May will be here like quickly, it feels like, the way things
So
are
they're
flying
not
by.
going to, so starting in June, that's it?
Right now, there would be no service
There would no service.
at High
current,
Rocks.
Period, right, starting now.
Correct. Yeah.
Is there any indication that the county would be willing to help, support?
That's, no, not at this point.
They said no,
I
they
mean-
don't have any money.
I mean, they, you know.
Did they
I-
explicitly say no, or is it like where?
I was, when I asked this, so I said, are you asking Gladstone and Oregon City to pick up $240,000, or is the county willing to bring any funds? The response was Health and Human Services does not have any extra funds. I said, okay, well, this is going to be Marine Patrol, right? Well, law enforcement at county doesn't have any extra funds. So right now, I'm not aware of the county willing to bring any funds. I haven't talked to Gary. I haven't talked, you know, do we talk to the county commissioners? You know, is there a partnership here? Do we go to a reduced schedule, like we hit the big holidays? You know, I just want to make you aware that, you know, they signed this contract back in August. We found out today about the
The
no
county
service.
signed the contract with AMR?
Correct.
Okay.
You know, we asked, Ms. Betts asked, you know, was the county commissioners aware that this service was going to be terminated? The indication was yes. So I think we're a little bit surprised, especially with the late kind of notification at this point. And so, like I said, I'm bringing this forward just because it's brand new. I don't have an answer for it. And, you know, you know, bringing that kind of funding that quickly, you know, is a difficult decision.
I'm worried that without,
This is, yeah, this is.
that somebody's going to lose their life out there. And I don't know if there's any way that there could be some type of partnership between us and Gladstone and the county to help share the burden of the cost, but not having anybody out there really scares
Well, we
me.
can't shut it down. They're going to figure out a way to get there and do whatever.
Oh, there's going to be people there no matter what.
Oh, I know.
Right, and we'll
They're-
be paying for it no matter what,
Yeah.
whether it's from the county or police or whatever. So, no, this is a huge, I think we have to have some sort of dialogue, and again, an example of the county not communicating in a timely manner of a situation that should have been communicated and resolved
They've
before
been
this.
negotiating with AMR for quite some time.
Well, so what?
I know, but it could have come up.
That's different than
No, but-
having a conversation that their awareness of this ending at a certain time a
Well, that's
year
what
ago.
I'm saying. It probably was
could
brought
have
up when
been
they started
communicated
negotiations
to
and
the city of
and
Gladstone.
they decided not to tell
Stop
anybody.
making excuses from the county.
No, I'm not giving them an excuse. I'm just
Okay,
saying.
I'm just saying, they need to communicate better, because us finding that out today, not communication.
I mean, we're 90 days away. That is no time at all. I don't know what we
scary.
can do, but we need to figure something out yesterday.
Understood.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I have no report.
Adam?
Sure, just real quick. Yesterday, we had youth advisory, and it was at the Public Works Engineering and Operations Complex. They took a tour with Assistant Director Vance Walker. He did a great job. One of the reasons why I created the Youth Advisory Commission was because I wanted to give students an opportunity to see what different avenues in public service looks like, and recognizing that it doesn't always have to be, I'm going to be the president one day, but that public service also looks like, if you're interested in STEM, then maybe engineering and city engineering is something that's for you. And so specific to that route, I thought it was a very good presentation to show students the different opportunities that are ahead of them in public service beyond just what elected office looks like. We had C4 at the beginning of the month where they gave a presentation on the county's TSP process, basically. And as the city manager has already noted, this is just for facilities in the unincorporated areas, not including their facilities within cities. And so they gave a presentation, and one of the first slides was, despite the fact that these are only in the unincorporated areas, the key to this, to the success of this project will be our coordination with cities. And then all they said after that was that they acknowledged that cities do in fact exist in Clackamas County. And so after they went through their entire presentation, I pointed out that them just listing the fact that there are cities in Clackamas County didn't really help me in terms of feeling more comfortable about whatever this coordination looks like, and that in the absence of actually getting money for projects that belong to their facilities, even if they are in cities, in the absence of that, then the next best thing is to at least be consulted about the ones that are just outside of our city limits that still have a major impact on our transportation system. And they didn't really have an answer for that. They have their TAC, their Technical Advisory Committee, which has public works staff from the different cities. And so that's a part of it, but it was frustrating that even though we're not going to be receiving any of these dollars, we still ought to be a part of the process. But a good thing that we did do at C4 that night was that we approved a BUILD letter of support. So BUILD is the Better Utilizing Infrastructure to Leverage Development. And that's a US DOT surface transportation grant. And it was approved to sign a letter of recommendation for the Tumwater Village project on behalf of C4. So that was some good news coming out of that. And then lastly, for CIC, with the reconfiguration of Trail News and a bit of a shuffling of budgets, they had to have a conversation about what they wanted to do with their remaining funds. And something happened that I never thought would ever happen at a CIC meeting, which is that they were complaining about how much money they have and the fact that they don't think they can spend it by the end of the fiscal year. So because of how we're doing this change midway through the fiscal year, those leftover dollars are being allocated to them to use as they would like. And the suggestion was just, given that there's roughly $12,000 left over and that there are 12 neighborhood associations, give $1,000 to each. And so there are guidelines in place that our staff has put together for what those can be used for, strictly for community engagement. But that is where we are on CIC for right now.
I don't have anything for tonight.
Okay. In deference to you, I have no reports for tonight, and I move that the meeting will be adjourned.